Chapter 361. Really? Li Yunxin smiled again. But it's all in the past. Fortunately, the true dragon left a treasure for me. Now my injuries have mostly recovered. And just like what second brother saw, a donkey that I casually made is quite a capable general. I heard that you invited Princess Golden Rock and Princess Dongting to be your guests. So I came here on the donkey. I want to give this donkey to Princess Golden Rock as a gift. The light in Hatred's eyes dimmed. He seemed to be very disappointed. He moved the corner of his mouth. Shinryu's treasure? Li Yunxin smiled again. He paused for a while and said, "Do you remember you told me that Shinryu wanted to take back the dragon chi?" Before Hatred could speak, Li Yunxin said, "But Shinryu also told me, among the 9 dragon sons, there will be someone who wants to combine the dragon chi." Jinlong also said that second brother, "You've been making a lot of moves recently, so I'm afraid you're the most ambitious." She was afraid that I would be harmed by you, so she gave me a treasure to protect me. With that treasure, I was able to repel the golden photon. Li Yunxin sighed slightly. You must have seen the golden photon. Didn't you find that she was seriously injured? That's because I used that treasure to forcefully extract the sword sect magic treasure that was refined within her body. Speaking up to this point, Li Yunxin's tone became harsher. He turned his hand and showed the glazed sword. "Let me see. This is the treasure of the Kenzo." Hatred frowned. He stared at the glazed sword, and then at Li Yunxin. His face gradually showed, as if he was suppressing his anger. "Ninth brother, I heard it clearly. Ninth brother, do you think that I will kill you and steal your dragon soul while you are heavily injured? That's why you said all these things. You brought out the treasures of Shinryu, and rode this strange donkey around my valley to make me think that you're fine?" Hatred glared at him angrily. "You hurt second brother's feelings too much." Li Yunxin quickly waved his hand and said sincerely, "Second brother, what are you talking about? Younger brother was injured, and second brother was the first to rush over. Isn't that enough to prove that our brotherhood is stronger than gold? In my heart, I have no ill feelings towards second brother at all." However, Hatred still looked at him angrily for a while before shaking his head and sighing. "Forget it. Let's just forget about it." He stretched out his hand to Li Yunxin and said, "Come. Follow me to the camp so that you can meet your brother Chionyo's messenger. Your eldest brother, and the other brothers and sisters are also on their way here." Alas, those stupid Taoist priests on Cloud Mountain. They took advantage of the time when my demon power had not recovered, and rushed down to occupy my Tongtian Lake. Now I can only gather the big and small demon kings in Yi country, and set up a camp here. When your other brothers and sisters arrive, we will kill our way back to Cloud Mountain. So Li Yunxin snapped his fingers, and jumped on the big green stone that Hatred was standing on. Then, the scary donkey he was riding suddenly turned into a green light and disappeared. A piece of talisman floated down from the air, and was put into his sleeve. The 2 brothers looked at each other and smiled. Hand in hand, they walked into the depths of the canyon amicably, along with the clouds. Yazi said that he had gathered all the demons in the Yi country. However, Li Yunxin stood on the cloud and could not see anyone. The mountains on both sides of the Red Stone Canyon were undulating, and from time to time revealed towering peaks made up of huge naked red rocks. Some were almost deep into the clouds, and some were like long waterfalls. Although it was autumn, the trees on the mountain were yellow and green. But looking at such a vast and magnificent scene, he did not feel desolate at all. He only felt broad-minded, and wanted to float to the sky. But he could not see the demon camp that Hatred mentioned. As if seeing his doubt, Hatred laughed. "Ninth brother, you have not experienced the war between the demons and Xianmen, so it is normal that you do not know." He moved forward on the cloud and pointed. "According to the eyes of the secular people, this is a terrain that is easy to defend and difficult to attack. The Red Stone Canyon is winding in the Manjiao Mountains, and the Manjiao Mountains are not so much mountains, but a large raised plateau. These peaks seem to be only 200 or 300 meters high, but together with the plateau below, it is 1,000 meters high. Since the highland is surrounded by precipitous cliffs, the mortal army is able to guard the Red Stone Gorge in the middle of the mountain, and the area above it is a paradise. But ninth brother, You must know that mortals can only run on the ground. Us demons and in spirits, as well as the cultivators of Xian men, can all fly. Therefore, if the camp is set up on the ground, and the enemy comes to suppress us in the air, wouldn't we be at a disadvantage? Because of this, the nest of Xian men is on the cloud mountain, in the sky. As for us, we are either in the cave, or in the pool of water, or we are underground. At this point, hatred suddenly pressed down on the cloud, and the two suddenly plunged into the vast mountains. It was also at this time that Li Yunqin saw a huge bottomless pit on the ground. As the wind whistled in his ears, Li Yunqin suddenly felt that this pit was a bit familiar. As soon as this thought came to his mind, hatred had already rushed down with him. From the sky, this pit was not very big. It was about the size of a few big houses, and it went straight up and down. But after descending for a while, the space below suddenly became bigger. It turned out to be a huge underground cave, covered in darkness on all sides, and he did not know where the end was. Dozens of meters underground was the ground. There was fire on the ground. The fire stretched endlessly, coiling into a circle, very much like the appearance of an army. Previously, when hatred said in the sky that he had gathered the big and small demon kings in the Yi country to form an army, Li Yunqin only thought that it was a group of bandits. After all, he knew the stubborn temperament of the demons. How much prestige and deterrence would he need to have these irascible and stupid fellows under his control? But now, hatred seemed to have really done it. Each flame was a bonfire, and a dozen or so figures were faintly visible around the fire, as well as some tents, bedding and the like. The distance between the bonfires was actually close, and the size of the bonfires was also different. This was because demons were not ordinary people, and they were not all the same size. They were not even all with a pair of eyes, 2 arms, a nose and so on. In fact, it was a parade of demons and ghosts. These demons were all different in appearance and clothing. Under the leadership of the big and small demon kings, they gathered together, and the noise almost made the two people in the sky somersault. And the smell was not pleasant, very much like a smelly livestock market. Because of their stupid minds and violent tempers, there were often conflicts. Li Yunqin glanced around and saw at least 3 bonfires knocked over by the fighting little demons. Some screamed because of the heat, some clapped their hands and laughed. Some became violent because they were affected, and they could not help but break up and join the battle. After a while, there were 3 small disturbances. But the disturbances came quickly, and it seemed to go quickly. In an instant, demons of a higher level patrolled over, and they did not ask the reason. They grabbed one and tore it alive. If there was still one who did not obey, they tore another one. This bloody method was more effective than any reason and rules. The group of demons who were fighting with each other earlier immediately burst into laughter and scattered like birds and beasts. Such a scene played out continuously in this vast underground space. Li Yunqin realized that in less than a quarter of an hour, more than a dozen demons died because of this kind of thing. Such a way to die. Wouldn't that mean that most of them would die very soon? Hatred seemed to see his doubt again and smiled. Humph. These good-for-nothing fools. There are a lot of them. Much more than those stinky Taoist priests. Look here. It's actually just a camp that I've gathered. There are already 1,000 people here. In other places, there are 5 more camps like this. He usually said to go to the east. There were fewer fires in the east, and it was quieter. There was even a surging underground river, which made the sound of water. He and Li Yunqin landed by the water's edge. Looking ahead, they saw that on the flat ground covered with gravel, against the dark background, there stood a magnificent palace with flying eaves. Li Yunqin was a little surprised, and knew that this thing should be transformed from some magic weapon. So he gently let out a breath, put his hand into his sleeve, and touched the other treasure he hid. Fog-locked Toad Palace. Walking into someone else's magic weapon was not a wise move. He had to at least leave a way out for himself. This hatred affectionately held his hand, pulling him to the palace, and continued to say, "There are a lot of these fools. But as you can see, there are dozens of people dying in the infighting every day. If they are stationed in one place like a mortal army for a few months, it is possible that most of them will die, or they will not be able to restrain themselves from killing each other. But fortunately, we don't need to stay here for long. Cloud Mountain. Hatred stopped on the stairs in front of the palace and turned to look at Li Yunxin. Ninth brother. Do you know about Cloud Mountain? Li Yunxin tried to pull his hand out slightly, but Hatred's wrist was like an iron hoop, as if he was afraid that he would run away. He smiled. Second brother. Are you talking about the Cloud Mountain that descends once every 500 years will land in your Tongtian Lake? Hatred laughed. Good ninth brother. You actually know about it. So it must be because of this that he knew about it. That Cloud Mountain will only stay on the ground for about 10 days. If we want to use these demon soldiers, it will only take about 10 days. During this period of time, as long as they are not all dead and can be used, we don't need to care about them anymore. After saying this, they went up the stairs. When they reached the last step, Li Yunxin saw the inside of the palace. This huge cave was gloomy, like a crescent moon night. But this palace was brightly lit, and it was warm. The floor was covered with a scarlet carpet, and the walls were decorated with pictures of gold. Maids and servants walked to and fro in the wide and magnificent hall, which was more magnificent than the palace of a human emperor. But this was very much in line with his second brother's dressing style. Only then did Hatred let go of Li Yunxin's hand and looked at him. Ninth brother. Do you want to take revenge? The hatred of being chased by Daotong and Kinzo? Li Yunxin's heart jumped slightly. He was thinking about how to open his mouth so that he could take the first step. His first step was to unravel the noose. So he lowered his head in silence for a while and then raised his head again. But this time, the expression on his face had become very serious and sincere, and the aura on his body was suddenly restrained, as if he was about to make a difficult decision. Second brother, you should be relieved. You should be relieved now. He said this sentence without any rhyme or reason, and then seriously looked into Yazid's eyes. Hatred was slightly stunned, but then he smiled, and his eyes were playful. What do you mean? I have come to second brother's camp, and also to second brother's magic weapon. Li Yunxin took a breath in relief. Right now, my life is in your hands. It's time for us to have a frank talk. Ah, ninth brother, what are you saying? There is no benefit in swallowing me. Li Yunxin ignored his words and interrupted him stiffly. It is very disadvantageous to second brother. However, I, your ninth younger brother, have a way that satisfies both sides. I can make my second elder brother a great monster that can fight against true dragons and rock kings as equals. And I can save my own life. Second brother, do you want to hear it? Hatred maintained his smile and stared into Li Yunxin's eyes for a while. Then the smile on his face turned into a faint sneer. Ah, ninth brother, you think I want to swallow you? Well, let's think of it this way. In this way, what good idea do you want to tell second brother? As he said this, the tip of his tongue flashed across his lips. Li Yunxin didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that his mouth seemed to have become a little bigger. However, he was not flustered. He just smiled faintly. Second brother, please think about it. We are just a quarter of the original dragon breath of Shinryu. Shinryu hid half of the dragon breath in Dongting. Then he used the remaining half to divide us. Second brother, even if you worked hard to combine the 9 parts of the dragon breath into one, what can you do? It is just equivalent to the current Shinryu. Li Yunxin shook his head. I also know that second brother caught the princess of Dongting for the dragon breath in her body. But second brother, think about it again. Even if you swallow the princess of Dongting, it is not as good as Shinryu in its heyday. Shinryu. Li Yunxin raised his hand like an impassioned speaker. With another hand behind his back, he paced a few steps in front of the hall and turned his head. When Shinryu was born, there was a real dragon breath. So what? Did you subdue all the monsters in the world? Maybe you did. But didn't you still fight with the Golden Rock King? Furthermore, second brother had spent so much effort just to become the lord of the demons? Now, Xianmen wants to eliminate the monsters. Second brother has to deal with not only the monsters, but also Xianmen. Can Shinryu do anything to Xianmen in those days? Oh, Hatred narrowed his eyes and looked at him. It turns out that ninth brother is so ambitious. So according to what ninth brother said, this is not good. That is not good. What should we do? Li Yunxin's face turned serious. He pointed to the camp of the monsters in the west and then pointed up. There is so much monster power, second brother, can't you see it? Unseen gods rely on the power of prayers to increase our cultivation. But second brother, you should know that the resentment of the souls, and even the souls themselves, can be turned into spiritual power and monster power. I am not talented, but I set up a big array in the city of Wei, using the power of prayers of millions of souls, and with my cultivation of the transcendent state, I sealed Yunzi, who is in the true state, into the scroll. Then with the power of prayers I entered the true state. Second brother, think about it again. If there is such a convenient method, why didn't you use it before? It is because the Daotong is powerful, and they are in a delicate balance with us demons. If they want to eliminate the monsters, they need to pay a huge price. But if there is a big monster using this method to cultivate, not to mention how many people they need to kill, how much resentment they need, if the Daotong Kinzo knew about this, they would definitely not sit back and do nothing. And because of this, maybe some small monster kings tried to do this, but they were discovered by the Taoist priests and swordsmen and killed. Or their level is too low, and they can't do anything. But second brother now, Xianmen has broken the balance first. The big monsters follow the rules, and are careful, but they still want to fight. Li Yunxin said sternly. They have unleashed their ferocious nature, and killed until corpses and bones are everywhere. But they still want to fight. They have already shed all pretense of cordiality. What are you afraid of, second brother? Send all the big and small monster kings, and the demon soldiers under them to death. Then, send all the Taoist priests of Cloud Mountain to their deaths. By then, the land of Yi Kingdom will be filled with ghosts and resentment. I will set up a big array for second brother, and let them all be used by second brother. Hee. Such a huge power that no one has ever had before, and no one will be able to surpass. Can it be compared to the 3-part dragon soul? By then, second brother will be stronger than the Shinryu, and the 2 sages. Every time Li Yunxin said a word, Hatred's eyes flashed once. When Li Yunxin finished his last sentence, Hatred frowned, and his eyes seemed to want to cut open Li Yunxin's chest and dig out his heart, eager to see if what he said was true. After a moment of silence, Hatred said in a low voice, "Ninth brother set up an array for me? Humph. Ninth brother cultivates the art of painting. Now in the whole world, probably only ninth brother has the ability to turn resentment into his own. With this ability, if ninth brother secretly does something, how can second brother know? And so many ghosts, are you sure you can keep them? Ghosts? Second brother, didn't you notice?" Li Yunxin also lowered his voice. That Bai Yunxin killed hundreds of people in Little Rock Canyon. But after 6 hours, those hundreds of wandering souls are still wandering in the world of the living, and haven't been hooked by Black Bai Yanjun. When I was fleeing in the wild forest of Qing Kingdom, I also gathered countless wandering souls, and also haven't been hooked by Black Bai Yanjun. Second brother, did you not realize that something might have happened in Sunluo Temple, so that Black Bai Yanjun can't show up for a while? Chapter 362. This is such a great opportunity, but my second brother is still hesitating. Hee, you should know that we are not the only ones who have thought of this. Li Yunxin looked at him. All the great demons in the world with a bit of brains will have thought of this sooner or later. If someone else gets the first move, I'm afraid my second brother will regret it for thousands of years, even tens of thousands of years. Right at this moment, they suddenly heard a crisp clap from inside the hall. Then, a tall and slender man with a handsome face, wearing a white robe leisurely walked out of the door. With a smile on his lips, he clapped a few more times. Then he put down his fan and opened it, saying, "What a good thousands of years, even tens of thousands of years. Lord of Tongtian, your good-for-nothing ninth brother sure has a big mouth." Seeing this person, Li Yunxin was slightly stunned for a moment. From afar, his clothes, demeanor, and his extremely annoying tone made him look exactly like himself. Therefore he immediately sneered, "Second brother, why haven't I heard you mention this idiot before?" The man in white was stunned. Then he frowned in disbelief and pointed at him. "Little bastard, how dare you scold me?" Li Yunxin said quickly, Little bastard, who are you talking about? The man in white was furious. I'm talking about you. Li Yunxin sighed sympathetically and turned to look at Hatred. Hatred couldn't help but laugh out loud, but he stopped himself. He hurriedly coughed and said, Ninth brother, this is your big brother's friend. Li Yunxin raised his eyebrows. So? Yi coughed again and said with a smile, Ninth brother, now that things have come to this, to tell you the truth, I really don't want to swallow you. After saying this, he turned to look at the man in white. This is Wanderer Bai. He has followed your big brother for 2,000 years. A ghost cultivator at the peak of the realm of truth can't be underestimated. In fact, your big brother and I have already thought of the method you mentioned. This Wanderer Bai is your big brother's envoy. When he said this, Unfettered White snorted disdainfully. He seemed to have just realized that he had fallen into one of Li Yunxin's old tricks. But now that Hatred was talking about serious business, he couldn't curse back. He just closed the fan and stared at Li Yunxin with a gloomy look. Li Yunxin was silent for a moment. Then he smiled and tapped his forehead with his finger. I see. Ha, good second brother. So, you took Bai Yunxin and Hong Nyangzi to lure me into the trap? Humph. You idiot immediately fell for it. Wanderer Bai finally found an opportunity. He opened his folding fan with a swoosh, put his hands behind his back, and took 2 steps forward gracefully. He looked at Li Yunxin out of the corner of his eye, looking like a scholar. I heard that you're good at strategizing. Now that I've played a little trick, you fell for it obediently, Lord Tongtian. Do you really want your ninth brother to participate in our big business? It seemed that Wanderer Bai's words had poked Li Yunxin's sore spot. Or, Li Yunxin knew he had been tricked, so he wasn't as calm as before. Therefore, when Wanderer Bai said this, Li Yunxin frowned. Second brother. Second brother, this ghost cultivator insulted me in front of my face. Are you going to sit back and do nothing? Hatred didn't say anything, but Wanderer Bai immediately laughed out loud. He closed his fan with a swoosh and pointed at Li Yunxin from afar. Ah, little boy, now you look like you've been wronged and want to pull the corner of your big brother's clothes. Before I met you, I treated you as a well-matched opponent. Then, he turned around and strode into the hall, his clothes fluttering in the wind. Unfortunately, you're still no match for me. I'm extremely lonely. After he disappeared from the hall, Hatred looked at Li Yunxin again. He saw Li Yunxin turn his head, pucker his lips, and stare at the direction where Wanderer Bai had gone. He said with hatred, Ah, second brother. It doesn't matter if you want to use my formation or swallow my soul. But this ghost cultivator insulted me. He also insulted the dragons and you. Second brother, you. That big brother of yours has an indifferent temperament and likes music. Yi interrupted his words and smiled faintly. But he also likes men. Then, he patted Li Yunxin's shoulder, turned around and walked into the hall. Ninth brother, you can't insult the dragons. Even if you do, it's not the dragons who are insulted. You have to know this. Your other brothers and sisters aren't as easy to talk to as second brother. Hong Nyangzi and Bai Yunxin are both in the side hall. If you want to see them, go and see them. Then, Hatred disappeared behind the huge golden screen, which was carved with the picture of Shinryu subduing a group of demons. Li Yunxin stood silently in front of the hall for a while. The hatred on his face had disappeared, and he was now calm. Interesting. Then, he laughed in a low voice. He seemed to be suppressing his original intention to laugh out loud, so his shoulders trembled slightly. I like smart people the most. I thought he was a smart person. Wanderer Bai shook his head and smiled, then sighed slightly in self-pity. Unfortunately, there are always more stupid people in this world. Lord Tongtian, since we've already found the Guanyuan crypt, why do we need to bring him along? He was talking in a big room, but in fact, it was like a hall. In the middle of the magnificent hall, there was an astonishingly big white jade bed, decorated with jewel curtains and gold and silver tassels. At this moment, Wanderer Bai was reclining on the big bed, looking casual and relaxed. On the contrary, with one hand behind his back, Lord Tongtian, who was slowly pacing on the thick carpet in the room, looked like a guest. Hatred thought for a while, then shook his head. Young Master Bai, My ninth brother is not a simple person. Did you see him lose his temper just now? No, he's not that easy to get angry. Maybe at other times, but at this critical moment, which he thinks is between life and death. Of course I know that. Wanderer smiled faintly. Your ninth brother was surprised by my wisdom, and knew that he had fallen into a trap. Therefore, he suddenly felt alarmed, thinking that he had met a strong opponent. So he immediately pretended to be surprised and angry, so that we would look down on him. This kind of method is useless against this unaffiliated cultivator. I also know that he will make some moves soon, but I'm not in a hurry. After all, he still needs some time to compete with Xianmen. These days, I'll play with him. He thought for a while, then suddenly smiled. Actually, your ninth brother's appearance is not bad. Hatred smiled bitterly. Young Master Bai's tone is also my ninth brother's tone. No wonder I felt close to him when I first saw him. Hearing this, Wanderer suddenly smiled charmingly, squinting at him. Close. Does Lord Tongtian feel close to me? Then should Lord Tongtian really get close to me? Hatred coughed deeply, then said seriously, Young Master Bai, don't joke like this. My big brother won't like it. Let's get down to business. Before my ninth brother arrived, you and my big brother doubted my sincerity. Now that my ninth brother is here, you should know that I won't waver on Shinryu's side. Then you should tell me the key to this Guanyuan cave. Otherwise, just like what I said to my ninth brother, how would I know whether you'll use me and then throw me aside? Wanderer laughed. Lord Tongtian also has the heroic spirit of a straightforward person. Never mind. Young Dragon Master should be here soon. I'll tell you in advance. Nowadays, those ignorant secular people also talk about feng shui and earth qi. But Lord Tongtian, do you know when this theory of feng shui and earth qi started? Wanderer got up from the big bed, reaching out his hand to the back of his head. His combed black hair scattered wildly. He walked a few steps on the ground barefoot, then went to the short table beside the bed, and took a silver pot with golden threads. He lifted it up high, and poured the fine wine into his mouth. His loose inner robe became even looser, revealing his well-proportioned chest. Hatred frowned slightly, moving his gaze away from his chest. Young Master Bai said it started 2,000 years ago. At that time, you were still a cultivator of the Daotong school. The method you practiced focused on the spiritual energy of the mountains and rivers. Then you discovered feng shui and earth qi by chance, but it couldn't be accepted by the Daotong school. Thus, you couldn't advance in your cultivation and died of depression. But my big brother saved you, and you became a ghost cultivator. Yes, that's right. Wanderer swallowed the fine wine, and let out a long breath. He seemed to be a little drunk. Then he looked at Hatred with blurred eyes. Since 2,000 years ago, there have been all kinds of caves and feng shui in this world. The big cave we're in now is the Guanyuan cave I mentioned. The reason why it's called this is because, in terms of feng shui, the function of this cave is similar to the Guanyuan point in our body. The Guanyuan point in the body consolidates vitality and gathers demonic energy. And this Guanyuan cave, with my feng shui method, can similarly consolidate vitality and gather demonic energy. He smiled proudly. Lord Tongtian knows that the painting path your ninth brother practiced can be used to set up a formation to gather the resentment of souls. He also knows that the Daotong Kenzo also has a formation that can do this. But now, with the feng shui method that I've comprehended, I can also do it. Those idiots 2,000 years ago called my method a crooked one. But now he stared straight at Hatred, revealing an evil smile. Now I'll use my method to refine the souls of those stinky Taoists into demonic energy. Young Dragon Lord takes 70%, and Lord Tongtian takes 30%. Both of them can become great demons that can roam the world. As for me, I'll avenge my past. It's not in vain for my 2,000 years of obsession. He laughed wildly. Hatred also laughed along with him. Then he said, I've deduced what young Master Bai said. But how does your feng shui method work? I want to know this. Wanderer Bai immediately stopped laughing, and his face changed. He was tall and slender, with regular facial features. But once Yizi asked about this, the mouth, ears, eyes, and nose on his face immediately twisted into a ball. turning into a horrible ghost face. He suddenly stretched out his neck and sent his ghost face to Yazid's face like a soft noodle, and stared at Yazid's face from left to right. A sharp voice came from his mouth that had become a black hole. Feng Shui method. Why does Lord Tongtian ask this? Why does he ask this? Is it because he wants to steal my method? His voice suddenly rose a notch. Don't believe me. Don't believe me. You don't believe me. This scary voice was sharp and harsh, and the last 3 sentences became louder and louder. The utensils made of crystals, gems, and glazes in the big room all exploded with a bang, and the tiny fragments were directly shaken into big clouds of colorful fog. However, it seemed that it wasn't the first time for Hatred to see him like this. He sighed and took a step back. Since young Master Bai doesn't want to say it, let's not talk about it for now. You calm down first, I still have something to do. After saying this, he turned around and walked out of the room. Unexpectedly, Wanderer Bai's arms suddenly became long, like 2 ropes pouncing over and entangling Hatred's body. Lord Tongtian, where are you going? Lord Tongtian, don't you want to be close to me? Don't you want to be close to me? Then his body floated over, but he didn't look like a human anymore. He showed his ghost appearance again. Like a cloud of white fog with a scary face, he wandered on Hatred's body. His black hole-like mouth made a whimpering sound, and no one knew what he was saying. Hatred stood in front of the door and slightly closed his eyes for a while. Then he let out a long breath and opened his eyes again. He said in a low voice, "Young Master Bai is drunk." As soon as he said this, his body shook. Wandering Cultivator Bai, who had revealed his true body, was immediately shaken into countless wisps of white smoke, which quickly gathered on the big bed. He had regained the appearance of an elegant young master dressed in white from before. He just frowned and stared at Hatred. Hatred snorted again and strode out of the door. At this moment, Li Yunxin was trying to throw a white jade cup out of the window. Looking out from the window of the palace, it was all dark. The sunlight coming in from the hole was insignificant, only equal to the light of the crescent moon. In this vast and distant darkness, the light of the bonfire stretched far into the distance. Even though he was in the palace far away from the demons, he could still hear some roars from time to time. He held a lantern in his hand and threw it out of the window. The little thing drew an arc in the air and landed on the ground outside. It even rolled a few times, but when he turned his head, he found it on the table again. I tried. It didn't work, Bai Yunxin said in a low voice. It was also a huge and wide room, and the layout was the same as Wanderer Bai's. Bai Yunxin read Madam, and that maid were all imprisoned here. In fact, Li Yunxin's situation was similar to theirs. Li Yunxin turned around from the window and looked at Bai Yunxin. You took her away and said you didn't believe me. If you knew we would meet again today, why did you do that? If I didn't leave, I'm afraid she would have died in Dongting a few days ago, Bai Yunxin said, and turned to look at Red Madam. When Li Yunxin walked into the room, the fish monster looked up at him with surprise in her eyes. However, it was just for a moment. Soon, she was overwhelmed by sadness again and couldn't get rid of it. She continued to sit in the chair against the wall and stared at the window. Humph! Why did you do that? Bai Yunxin frowned and looked at her. Your father didn't treat you like a father and daughter. In order to provoke the conflict between my adoptive father and Shinryu, he refined the dragon soul into you. Do you know that once your dragon soul is taken away, your soul will also scatter and scatter? This person, she said and pointed at Li Yunxin. This person can't do anything. But Red Madam turned a deaf ear to her words. There was no emotion in her eyes at all. She was like a body that was about to lose its vitality. She is a ghost cultivator. Li Yunxin sighed in a low voice. Her obsession is love. This kind of thing can't be explained by common sense. Why do you say this? But what about provoking your adoptive father and Shinryu? Bai Yunxin looked at him. I can't tell you about this. She refused directly. Then the young maidservant beside her served her tea and stared at Li Yunxin at the same time. It seemed that a few months ago, she was a mortal who had to tremble in front of them and beg for her life. But now, she had become a great demon who could stand in front of them and talk calmly. This matter puzzled her so much that she became more and more curious about Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin glanced at the teacup in Bai Yunxin's hand. When Bai Yunxin opened the lid, he saw that it was not tea, but a red warm liquid. He felt that it might be what he imagined. If you don't tell me, how can I save you? He sighed, walked to Bai Yunxin and sat down next to her, looking at her. I originally had a good plan, but the three of you came out and messed up my plan. I could have ignored you, but first, I promised you that I would help you settle the engagement with the dragons. Second, you did it to save me. How can I owe you such a favor? Bai Yunxin took a sip of the tea. She licked her lips quickly with the tip of her tongue, and looked at Li Yunxin with a pair of black eyes. Save us? Then she turned to look at the little maid beside her. Do you believe him? The little maid giggled. But maybe it was because she was a demon. Her smile always revealed a ghastly evil spirit. I don't believe him. In my opinion, miss, he obviously wanted to sneak into Hatred's lair. But he didn't have a good excuse. Now that he saw us, he just rushed over. Hee. After saying that, she covered her mouth and laughed again. At this time, Li Yunxin knew where the evil spirit in her smile came from. When she smiled, she showed her sharp fangs in her mouth. Coupled with her cute appearance, it was very strange. Bai Yunxin smiled as well. That's right. That fish spirit, on the way here, found out about you, and made a fuss to find you. First, I found her annoying. Second, I didn't know where to go. Third, I was afraid that she would really kill herself and waste the dragon's soul. So I came here to have a look. As for whether Hatred deliberately revealed it to her, or whether Hatred set this trap for her, I don't care. Humph. Although I have wandered in this world for thousands of years, as long as my adoptive father doesn't show up, no one dares to do anything to me. If you want to save her, you might as well save her. After she said this, the little maid beside her became anxious. Miss, you lost your mind. You obviously also. Bai Yunxin suddenly turned her head and stared at her. Shut up. But the maid didn't listen. Like a gust of wind, she ran behind Li Yunxin to look at her miss, grabbed Li Yunxin's shoulder to cover herself, and only showed half of her face. Let me tell you, if you want to save that fish spirit, you have to save my miss. My miss is not. Little hussy, how dare you? Bai Yunxin seemed to be angry, and became angry. She waved her sleeve, and a white feather shadow appeared in the air. Li Yunxin had seen the power of this shadow. When he was plotting against the ninth young master, he lured Bai Yunxin here. At that time, when this monster waved her sleeve, half of the houses on the street were destroyed by her, and many people died. Now, seeing that she used this trick in the house, Li Yunxin immediately raised his hand to block. The scales on his right arm were closed, and there was a metallic light. Then there was a buzzing sound. It was as if countless steel knives were chopping down on an incomparably hard iron plate, causing the floor of the room to tremble. Li Yunxin's right arm immediately exploded with a large amount of sparks. Seeing that her attack didn't hit, Bai Yunxin became angry. She immediately stood up from the chair and shouted, Well, I haven't fought with you for a long time. Now let me see what you are really capable of. After saying that, two beams of dazzling white profound light suddenly lit up behind her. A pair of dazzling white wings could be vaguely seen in the middle of the two streaks of light. Between the feathers of the wings, there were specks of white light falling down. If Li Yunxin didn't feel the vigorous and violent monster power contained in the wings, he would really think that the scene was holy and beautiful, like a dream or a fantasy. However, the maid behind Li Yunxin wasn't afraid at all when she showed such a terrible and terrifying aura. She spoke very fast. While hiding behind Li Yunxin, who also stood up, she said like a popcorn, Listen to me. My miss didn't do it just for the fish monster. When the fish monster asked her to come, she immediately agreed, and told me that no matter what, she had to take a look. I've been with her for so long, and I've never seen her take a look for someone else. She told you to ignore her and save her, because you will be in danger if you save 3 people. But if you don't save my miss, you're the biggest bastard in the world. Little hussy, I'll tear your shell off. Hearing the maid say all these in one breath, Bai Yunxin seemed to be really angry. The wings made of light behind her suddenly expanded, as if there were 10 suns appearing in the room at the same time. Then, There was another long and drawn-out cry of a crane. Countless white feathers, shining with a deadly cold light, shot over like a torrential storm. The maid panicked and hurriedly shouted, "Miss, spare me, spare me, spare me. I won't dare to do it again. Young Master Li is still seriously injured. You're going to kill him." The violent aura and monster power pressed over like a rolling tide. The outer robe formed by the monster power on Li Yunxin's body was torn and turned into countless tiny pieces. However, a new white robe grew out from the pieces. It looked like the skin was regenerating. In this fast, violent and shocking attack, Li Yunxin took a deep breath and shouted in a deep voice, "Enough!" Then, this attack actually disappeared without a trace because of his low shout. It was as if everything was just an illusion. Bai Yunxin and the maidservant stood dumbfounded in the room. After a full 3 breaths, Bai Yunxin looked at her hand in disbelief, then looked at Li Yunxin. How is this possible?" Chapter 363. Li Yunxin panted heavily twice and took another step back. He seemed to be exhausted, but even so, he actually dissolved the attack of a raging True Realm demon. There were 3 realms in the True Realm: Enlightened Master, Advanced Enlightened Master, and Perfect Harmony Enlightened Master. And Bai Yunxin's cultivation level was about to enter the Advanced Enlightened Master realm. Although the improvement of a demon's cultivation mainly came from the power of faith, and this Bai Yunxian had been wandering around the world for a long time and didn't pay much attention to it. As a true realm demon, her attack was not something that could be easily blocked by anyone below the profound realm. Moreover, Li Yunxin was not resisting, but neutralizing it. There was a world of difference between the two. This strange thing made Bai Yunxin forget to be angry. She stared at Li Yunxin for a while and said again, "How could it be?" Then Li Yunxin saw that her eyes were filled with curiosity and danger. Just before he had the time to say enough, Bai Yunxin clasped her hands together and suddenly pushed forward. 10 streaks of snow-white sword light shot over at the same time. Before Li Yunxin could make any move, they had already landed on his body. But he was still unharmed. The curiosity in Bai Yunxin's eyes grew even more intense, to the point that her eyes instantly turned pitch black, without a single trace of white left in them. Even the maidservant behind Li Yunxin, Little Shell, cried out in panic this time, "Miss, don't do it." Just as she said this, Li Yunxin suddenly moved. He took a heavy step forward. With this step, the whole room seemed to tremble with his stomp. Then he said in a low voice, "Good." No one knew what he meant by the word good, and who he meant it for. But just as he said this, a burly golden strongman suddenly appeared in the void behind Bai Yunxin. This warrior's body was made of golden light, and it shone brightly. Standing in the void, his figure was a little blurry and flickering. It seemed that the person controlling him didn't have the ability to completely control him. Looking at his appearance again, he was not as dignified and solemn as those gods summoned by ordinary Taoist techniques. On the contrary, this strong man looked like a mortal who mingled in the streets. He was a slightly plump man in his 30s or 40s. He had short hair and was bare-chested. He only wore a pair of shorts and a short towel over his shoulder. But even so, coupled with the brilliant golden light on his body, this man had a mysterious aura around him. As soon as he appeared, Bai Yunxin immediately turned around and waved her hand to slash a sword light. However, the sword light passed through his body. And then the man. He pressed Bai Yunxin to the ground. Maid Xiaoqi exclaimed again. This time it was because, how was this possible? Looking at Bai Yunxin, she was a great demon of the true state. She had roamed the world for so long, but when had she ever been pressed to the ground by anyone? She was stunned for a moment, and then countless rays of light burst out of her body. It was unknown whether it was sword energy, flying feathers, or some kind of innate magical power. In short, she seemed to have used all her abilities to break the golden-bodied god who was pressing on her shoulder. But she didn't expect that the short towel on the god's shoulder was also a powerful magical weapon. The burly man muttered something and even raised his head to look at Li Yunxin. Then Li Yunxin shouted in a low voice, "Good." The god raised his hand and removed the towel from his shoulder. Then, he pressed the golden towel on Bai Yunxin's body. The various divine powers of this true realm great fiendish demon instantly disappeared without a trace. The maid was so shocked that she couldn't say a word. Even Red Madam, who looked like a wooden statue, slightly opened her eyes and looked at Bai Yunxin on the ground. At this time, Li Yunxin walked over and squatted down beside Bai Yunxin. He leaned over and whispered in her ear, "Stop it." His voice was calm and powerful. Then, he thought for a moment and said to Bai Yunxin, who was staring at him, "I can only use the restriction in this room for 15 minutes. If you continue to make trouble after this time, Hatred and Wanderer Bai will know. My injury hasn't recovered yet. Do you really want me to die here?" The two of them looked at each other for a few seconds. The darkness in Bai Yunxin's eyes slowly disappeared, and her black and white eyes reappeared. She stared at Li Yunxin. "I'm teaching my maid a lesson. How dare you stop me? I'm here to save you." Li Yunxin sighed and interrupted her. "But I'm here for something else. I want to save all three of you. But if you continue to make trouble, I might not be able to leave." Bai Yunxin's expression changed. After a while she frowned. "Save us?" She looked at Li Yunxin as if she was looking at a monster. "You would do such a thing?" Then she looked at her servant girl. Li Yunxin stood up. At the same time, he shouted to the Golden Light Warrior who was still pressing Bai Yunxin. "Done!" The incredible god immediately turned into spots of light and disappeared. Then, all the tables, chairs, and cups in the room that were destroyed during the fight were miraculously restored. "Don't misunderstand." Li Yunxin let out a sigh of relief, smiled, and said to Bai Yunxin, "It's because you saved me." At this moment, the maid Little Shell hurried over to help her young miss. Bai Yunxin glared at her fiercely. The maid was so scared that she was about to cry, but she still went over and hugged her arm. "I was plotted against and broke through to the next realm." He thought for a while. "So there are some things that I can't owe you. Speaking of which, you saved me twice. If I don't return this favor, I'm afraid that I'll encounter inner demons and tribulations in the future." But at this moment, Bai Yunxin didn't seem to be most concerned about this point. Although it seemed that Li Yunxin's words didn't convince her completely. She only stared at Li Yunxin. "How did you do it?" "You mean, I used my cultivation level, which is almost one realm lower than yours, and I was seriously injured. But I was able to neutralize 2 of your attacks, and even pressed you to the ground, so that you couldn't move, and let me play with you?" Li Yunxin blinked. "Do you want to know?" Anger appeared on Bai Yunxin's face again, and she looked like she was about to attack again. The maid hurriedly hugged her arm. Young miss. Li Yunxin laughed. "I'll tell you. But if I tell you, you have to tell me what you said just now about Lord Dongting sealing the dragon soul, and provoking your adoptive father and Shinryu. You know, if I want to save you, I have to stir up trouble. But if I don't know more, I won't be able to stir up trouble." Then, regardless of whether Bai Yunxin responded or not, he said in a low voice, "Actually, it's not my ability. It's just that I know more about this palace than you do." The maid's eyes widened. "You've been here before?" "It's my first time here," Li Yunxin said. "But I've encountered something similar in the Pitfall Mountain. This palace is a magic treasure. But it might not be an ordinary magic treasure. The Dharma I practice happens to know more about this kind of thing. I know some of the chi movement and the key points. Right now, I can only say this much, because even I'm not very sure. So in fact, it's not that I dissolved or suppressed you. It's that this magic treasure dissolved and suppressed you. It's not a shameful thing to lose to a magic treasure that might be made by a sage." After saying this, he turned to look at Red Lady again. The light in Red Lady's eyes was extinguished again, and she fell into deep sorrow again. This was a world of difference from her appearance in the past. Li Yunxin still remembered the first time he saw her. She was walking on the road in Egret Town, wearing a festive red dress. At that time, she looked energetic, although not very happy. There was always a lively life. Maybe it was Li Yunxin's explanation that made Bai Yunxin feel relieved. Or as a demon, she didn't care much about things like magic treasures. To control a magic treasure required a spell, and the spell couldn't be casually memorized and used. For example, The scholars in Li Yunxin's world could easily understand a seemingly concise and simple principle or theorem. But under this concise and simple appearance, it was the result of decades of systematic basic training. Demons didn't practice Taoism, so they naturally didn't want to understand it. Even if they had a magic treasure, they only wanted to be able to use it. It seemed that Bai Yunxin was also one of them. After listening to Li Yunxin's words, she turned to look at the big house and asked, "So can you get out?" "I can't," Li Yunxin said straightforwardly. "Just now, I was borrowing the qi movement. But if I want to go out, it belongs to the scope of opening or closing the prohibition. I can do it. But you have to know that it's not only the magic treasure that won't let me go out, but also people." "Then what are you going to do? Come here?" Bai Yunxin frowned. "You're now a demon. Now it's a war between the demons and the Xianmen. If you don't help the demons, do you have other purposes? What you said is so strange. I'm a demon. Why should I help the demons?" Li Yunxin looked at her funny. "The demons are also making things difficult for me. The Daotong Kenzo are also making things difficult for me. So isn't it better for me to make them all die?" Bai Yunxin shook her head. "I'll tell you what you want to do first. Then I'll think about whether or not to tell you about my adoptive father." Li Yunxin shrugged slightly. "You've already heard it. The demons and the Xianmen are making me too annoyed. I want to kill them all." Bai Yunxin was stunned and looked at the maid next to her. Then the two of them laughed together. Their voices were like silver bells swaying in the chilly wind. It was clear and sweet, but there was something strange about it. You're not joking?" Bai Yunxin looked like she heard a joke. "You want to get rid of the Daotong Kenzo and the demons? Do you know that they have existed since the day there were living creatures in this world? Everything will die one day. If everyone thinks that it's impossible at every stage, then they will really exist forever," Li Yunxin said seriously. "Now, I feel that time has advanced to a node. At this node, the demons and the Xianmen will both decline, and I will trigger this node." He smiled again. "I'm not saying that I'm going to pull all the demons and cultivators to the sky, then kill them all by myself." Bai Yunxin thought for a while then smiled. "Okay." Her smile was a little more evil. "I didn't waste my effort to spare your life before. Looking at you now, it's really interesting. This world is very annoying. But you've defeated the demons and the Xianmen. What kind of world do you want?" Li Yunxin was silent for a while. Then he whispered, "Let's talk about it then." Bai Yunxin put her hands behind her back and walked a circle around him, as if she had thrown all her previous anger out of the window. Instead, she was attracted by Li Yunxin's novel idea, and thus developed a new interest. Then she stopped behind him and whispered, "Okay, listen. The reason why my adoptive father, the Golden Rock King, asked me to go to Dongting to get the dragon meat every year is that he needs to replenish his monster power. And the reason why he needs to replenish his monster power is that he is actually sealed now. Of course, you can guess who can seal him. It's Shinryu. 2,000 years ago, Shinryu fought with my adoptive father. The story of one scale 3 feathers is well known in the world. But what you don't know is that after the battle 2,000 years ago, Shinryu also sealed him. Everyone in the world knows that Shinryu melted half of his soul and sealed him in Dongting 2,000 years ago. And now you also know that the Lord Dongting sealed himself in the lake for 2,000 years in order to protect the dragon's soul. But do you know why Shinryu did that?" Li Yunxin frowned. After thinking for half an hour, he whispered 2 words. "The eye of the circle." The eye of the circle. At this time, Bai Yunxin no longer had the ruthlessness of the demons. Her voice seemed solemn and calm. "Yes, the eye of the circle. The eye of the circle was built with half of Shinryu's dragon soul, and half of the personal ability of the Supreme Realm. And you have to know that Shinryu divided half of the dragon soul, and kept the other half. Then he turned the other half into 9 sons. So the current Shinryu only has a quarter of the personal ability of the past. But he is still in the Supreme Realm. Then you can imagine how strong Shinryu was in the past." Bai Yunxin slowly turned in front of him and looked at him. "And you can imagine how strong the Golden Rock King was to be able to fight with Shinryu." Li Yunxin took a deep breath. "It's hard to imagine." Then the so-called disaster that Shinryu encountered 2,000 years ago was not a disaster. But to seal the Golden Rock King? Wasn't my adoptive father a disaster? Bai Yunqin sneered. For Shinryu, who wanted to be the ruler of all the demons in the world, as long as my adoptive father was there, her position would not be stable. In the mortal kingdom, a dynasty will not have two monarchs. Is the dragon dynasty enough? Therefore, take another guess. What does the so-called art saint's demonization have to do with this matter? This time, Li Yunqin only thought for 3 breaths. If I guess according to the conditions you gave me, the Golden Rock King is so strong, Shinryu would not be able to seal him. And on the side of Xianmen, there used to be 2 sages and the Golden Rock King. But 2,000 years ago, Xianmen had 1 more sage, and the demons had 1 more Shinryu. Moreover, both Shinryu and the Golden Rock King were unbelievably strong. If I was from Xianmen, I would definitely provoke the 2 demon kings to fight to the death. And if Shinryu wanted to seal the Golden Rock King, then the sages would be more than happy to help. In this way, Shinryu would be the ruler of all the demons in the world, and Xianmen would get rid of a big problem. Isn't it a win-win situation? But your adoptive father is unlucky. Li Yunqin's eyes were filled with joy as he said this. It seemed that all conspiracies and schemes would arouse his interest. Thus, his voice became even more excited. He began to pace on the ground with his hands behind his back, saying as he walked, Interesting. But from Shinryu's point of view, she lost half of her dragon soul to seal the Golden Rock King. So she must know that Xianmen would be happy to see such a situation. She, a demon king, would definitely find it difficult to deal with 3 sages. So what did she do to the art saint? What did she do to the 3 sages? Li Yunqin walked faster. No. There's another variable, the Freemasonry. At that time, the Freemasonry was also involved. The Freemasonry also wanted to infiltrate Xianmen. But in order to infiltrate, they must first weaken. They hit it off. 2,000 years ago, the 3 sages provoked Shinryu and the Golden Rock King to weaken each other. And 1,000 years ago, Shinryu was prepared and provoked the 3 sages of Xianmen to weaken each other. It wasn't that easy. It was Xianmen after all. But in the dark, the Freemasonry added fuel to the fire. So 1,000 years of war broke out. The 2 sages thought that the art saint was possessed by the devil, and Xianmen really fought among themselves. And then, the 2 sages also fell into the Freemasonry's trap. Li Yunqin stopped abruptly and stared straight at Bai Yunqin. There was still a hint of madness in her eyes. Scheming against each other. Interlocking. In the end, all 3 of them will be injured and the third party will benefit from it. Am I right? Bai Yunqin was stunned for a while. How did you think of so much? Li Yunqin laughed out loud. I see. I hate that I wasn't born in that era. It's truly a turbulent and treacherous situation. But soon he shook his head. No. That was just the beginning, the foreshadowing. Now it's much more dangerous than that. So little girl, do you see it? He stared at Bai Yunqin. It's time. 2,000 years of foreshadowing, and now it's time. What I'm going to do now is what those top beings in the world didn't finish. Lunatic. Bai Yunqin snorted coldly. And then, Li Yunqin looked at her unsatisfied. Go on. I want to know what else is going to happen. And then, Bai Yunqin seemed to be happy to see Li Yunqin's madness, which made him more interesting. So she thought for a while and sneered. And then that Dongting. The vast Dongting is only the eye of the formation. So what does the whole formation look like? How big is it? Speaking of this, she paused. It's as big as half of the world. In the past 2,000 years, the human dynasties in the central area of the Midland have barely changed, and the territories between countries have barely changed. Why did Daotong and Kinzo spend so much effort to ensure this? That's because these human dynasties and countries form this entire formation. Using mountains and rivers as the formation is nothing. The real formation is using the whole world as the formation. Bai Yunqin sneered again. I know that wanderer Bai. He claimed that he discovered some geomancy and earth qi, that suddenly appeared 2,000 years ago. He also said that the Taoist school of Taoism refused to recognize it. That Taoist school of Taoism even recognized the art saint and her painting school. Why didn't they recognize him? Because the geomancy and earth chi he mentioned all originated from the formation that sealed my adoptive father in the world. This formation was created by the three saints and the Shinryu. Who dares to touch it? Once his geomancy and earth chi method is spread all over the world, it will be like termites eating a dam. One day, this formation will collapse. Speaking of this, Li Yunxin didn't interrupt. He just frowned slightly, as if he was thinking about something difficult to think about. After thinking for a while, he said, "You mentioned the inhibition that sealed the Lord Dongting and Dongting. Now hearing what you said, the inhibition of Dongting is like a miniature version of the formation of the world. But it's not the soul of the Shinryu, but half of the soul of Chiwen." He pondered for a while. The Lord Dongting also told me that to unlock the inhibition of Dongting, the dragon chi of Chiwen can do it. So the formation of the world you mentioned also needs the soul of the Shinryu to unlock it? Yes, Bai Yunxin said solemnly. If the dragon soul as the eye of the formation is taken away, this formation can still run for a few days. However, once the dragon soul is given to my adoptive father, his inhibition will be unlocked immediately. Before, my adoptive father asked me to go to Dongting to get the flood dragon meat every year, because there is a little dragon chi in the meat. With this method, after thousands of years, I can probably break the formation. When I go to get the flood dragon meat, Shinryu knows it, Daotong and Kinzo also know it. But since they know why they have been acquiescing, I can't figure it out. What about you? Li Yunxin frowned. I also can't figure it out. There is too little information. He glanced at Red Lady again. Then your adoptive father suddenly asked you to come to get the dragon soul. Before, the people of Langia Cave Paradise also came to get the dragon soul. Why? Red Madam smiled and said, because he said that another calamity is coming for the world. He can't wait any longer. He also said that I can just come to get the dragon soul. Shinryu will not really stop me, Daotong and Kinzo will not really stop me. He also said the appointed day with that person is coming. Li Yunxin frowned sensitively. Who? I don't know. Bai Yunxin snorted. But I don't want to give the dragon soul to him now. She also turned to look at Red Lady. I think this fish spirit is interesting. I haven't had enough fun yet. Besides, I don't want to marry any dragons. Well, I promised you this. Li Yunxin said, since I promised you, I will do it. At this time, a voice suddenly came from outside the door. How arrogant you are. You are just in the true state and you are injured. How can you guarantee that? Wanderer Bai suddenly opened the door and walked in, fanning himself. Chapter 364. At this moment, his hair was loose and his chest was exposed. Although there was a smile on his face, everyone could see that there was anger hidden under the smile. It seemed that he had been wronged somewhere else. Bai Yunxin's expression changed. She immediately turned to look at Li Yunxin, who knew how long Wanderer Bai had been listening outside the door when he suddenly broke in. But they didn't notice him at all. However, Li Yunxin smiled and shook his head. It's only been a quarter of an hour. Bai Yunxin was slightly stunned, and then heaved a sigh of relief. Li Yunxin previously said that he could use the qi in this room for a quarter of an hour, to ensure that their voices in the room wouldn't be heard outside. And now a quarter of an hour had passed. Wanderer Bai came at the right time. Wanderer Bai didn't know what this sentence meant. He slightly frowned. I said. We were only separated for a quarter of an hour in the front hall. Why did you come looking for me? Do you dislike me? Li Yunxin snorted. I don't want to talk to you. Wanderer Bai's expression froze. It seemed that he was about to lose his temper again, but he quickly suppressed it, and looked at Li Yunxin with a smile. Oh, this matter isn't up to you. Right now, the monster kings outside have come to the hall. Lord Tongtian wants me to invite you to the hall, so that we can discuss the matter. He pretended to open his folding fan again, and covered half of his face. He slightly lowered his head, and only revealed a pair of eyes to look at Li Yunxin. Coincidentally, I also want to see what kind of brilliant ideas you, who is known for your intelligence, have. Lord Wei River, why don't you come with me? After saying that, he let out a light laugh and closed his folding fan. With his hands behind his back, he swaggered away. In the eyes of outsiders, his behavior might be interesting and cool. But Li Yunxin knew this kind of pretentiousness too well, because he liked to do it most of the time. So he sighed and turned to look at Bai Yunxin. I have to go. Bai Yunxin's expression was strange. She wanted to say something but stopped. The maid beside her said, My young miss told you to be careful. After that, she stuck out her tongue and quickly retracted it. Bai Yunxin didn't yell at her. She just snorted and walked away. Li Yunxin smiled. It's nothing. Even if he wanted to kill me, it wouldn't be now. Then he turned around and walked out. When he reached the door, he glanced at Red Lady, who was sitting against the wall in a daze. Red Lady suddenly grabbed his hand. The demoness stared at Li Yunxin in a daze for a while before saying, Be careful. Li Yunxin also patted her hand. In fact, he had a general idea in his mind, a bold and wild idea. It was just that many of the details were not perfect enough. However, this was something that could not be perfected. The bigger the setup, the harder it was to control the details. All he could do was control a few key points. He had already completed the most important task half a month ago, when he was fleeing from the wildfire in the wilderness forest. Right now he needed to complete the first node. To get the approval of the demons, or hatred. It might not be a sincere trust, but at least it was enough for him to move freely, so that he could proceed to the second step. Maybe the next step would be a good opportunity. Li Yunxin walked in a long and wide corridor. Wanderer Bai was leading the way a dozen steps ahead. He didn't know what was wrong with Wanderer Bai. He looked at him from time to time, like a prostitute in heat. Li Yunxin thought of this and suddenly understood something. He was stunned for a moment and then sighed. He walked like this for a quarter of an hour. He didn't know how many turns he made, but he came to the door of a hall. This hall didn't seem to be the one he came to when he entered the palace. It was bigger than that one. As soon as he walked to the door, he heard a loud noise. It sounded like someone was quarreling inside. The noise almost broke the roof. But if he listened carefully, he would find that it was just a lot of people talking loudly and making noise. When he stepped into the door, he saw everything clearly. The hall was very tall. The tallest among the demon kings was more than 6 feet tall. This height, according to the measurement of Li Yunxin's previous world, was almost 7 meters tall. It was almost the height of a 3-story building in this world. The clenched fist was almost as tall as him. But such a demon standing in the hall didn't seem uncomfortable at all. There was a considerable distance between the top of his head and the roof. The dragon carved on the roof was slightly blurry. It was tall and wide. If he looked around, he would find that the faces of the demon soldiers and servants standing beside the house were blurred. Instead of calling it a hall, it was better to call it a covered roof. It was as bright as day under the bright light. In such a hall, dozens of demons of different heights and appearances were gathered together. It was densely packed and bustling with noise and excitement. And hatred sat on the main seat in the north. The throne was made of shiny gold, and inlaid with all kinds of gems. It was luxurious and extravagant. But when he sat on it, he didn't feel out of place at all. On the contrary, it made him look dignified, like a god in the clouds. When he stepped into the door, Wanderer Bai, who was in front of him, walked towards Yazi and said loudly, Monster Kings, the person you want is here. This is the famous Lord of Wei River, Dragon 9 Kisses. But now, he prefers to call himself Li Yunxin. He was the one who killed your demon generals in the Red Stone Gorge. Wherever he went, the tall demon kings made way for him. They seemed to be afraid of him. After he said this, the demon kings immediately stopped talking. Only Wanderer Bai's voice could be heard echoing in the vast hall. And these scary big demons stared at Li Yunxin. They weren't looking at him in a friendly way. You could find all kinds of negative emotions in their gazes, but none of them were respectful or friendly. Wanderer Bai walked for the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, before he reached the side of hatred's throne. He turned around, and looked at Li Yunxin from afar. If you want to ask him for an explanation, let's do it now. As soon as he said this, the demon kings became noisy again. But at this moment, Yazi raised his hand slightly and said in a deep voice, "All of you are venerables among the demons, and also king dukes and generals under me. You have the power to command an area. So you should know that tearing and killing soldiers is a common thing. You don't need to make a big deal out of this." After saying this, he turned his head slightly and looked at Wanderer Bai with the corner of his eye. "Young Master Bai, we need to talk business now. Let's not talk about personal grudges for now." Wanderer Bai snorted coldly. "How can I dare to go against Lord Tongtian's will?" And so, these wild and unruly demon kings actually quieted down for the time being, although they would still whisper and whisper angrily to each other. But considering their cruel nature, and the fact that King Generals was actually just a title and didn't have a close relationship with them, it could be seen that Hatred's reputation was quite prominent among the demons of this country. Then, Hatred nodded slightly to Li Yunxin. "Ninth brother, I called you here to discuss the matter you mentioned before." Hatred paused and waved his hand. The heavy door behind Li Yunxin closed. He continued, "It's about converting the souls of the cultivators of Daotong and Kenzo into resentment and demon power." Hearing this, Li Yunxin frowned slightly and looked at the demon kings in the hall. Hatred seemed to know what he was thinking and smiled. "What? Ninth brother? Do you think that only your big brother and I can enjoy such a good thing?" Then, he shook his head and stood up, raising his hands slightly. "All the great demons here have followed me for a long time. These friends can't be sacrificed so casually. If your big brother and I can enjoy the benefits, you and your other brothers and sisters will naturally benefit as well. The demon kings will also benefit from this." Hearing these words, the crowd of demons immediately became noisy, shouting and cheering together as if victory was right in front of them. At this moment, Wanderer Bai spoke again. His voice was soft but sharp, like a venomous snake slithering in the crowd. "So Lord Tongtian is still kind-hearted. What about your ninth brother? Back then, he actually said that he wanted to sacrifice all the demon kings present. He's truly sinister and ruthless." At this moment, Li Yunxin understood why these demon kings were so hostile towards him. When he entered Redstone Gorge, he did kill a lot of small demons, but who would care about small demons? The demon kings didn't hate him because their demon soldiers were killed by him, but because Hatred and Wanderer Bai told these demon kings what he told them before. Who wouldn't hate him when they knew that Dragon Geo kissed Li Yunxin to throw them away as consumables? So Li Yunxin laughed. "So you sold me out? Second brother, you didn't do it properly." Hatred coughed. "Ninth brother, I didn't mean it, but..." Li Yunxin shook his head. "It doesn't matter. So, what do you want to ask me when you called me here?" Wanderer Bai smiled sinisterly. As the saying goes, one man's stratagem is limited. Lord of Wei River, Li Yunxin's wisdom is well known in the world. Although we have already thought of what you said, we still feel that there might be some flaws. So we want to hear your plan. Maybe we can complement each other. Moreover, these demon kings will fight side by side with Lord of Wei River in the future. It's a good thing to resolve the hatred and make friends with him earlier. What do you think? I think we should refine this little dragon first, so that we can rest assured. Just as Wanderer Bai finished his words, someone else spoke. The voice was vicious and low, as if it came from a cold pond. However, the demon who spoke wasn't very tall or big. His face was green, and he wore a cyan light armor. There was a white cloak on his shoulder, and 2 golden melon hammers hung on his waist. After saying this, he walked out from the crowd of demon kings, stood in the front, and stared at Li Yunxin. "I heard that Dragon Geo didn't have any ability, and he lived by the Dongting Lake, relying on the Lord Dongting to protect him. But after the Lord Dongting went to see the Dragon Lord, Li Yunxin used tricks to kill many aquatic creatures in the Dongting Lake. Among them were my former relatives." Speaking of this, he suddenly opened his mouth, making a mocking sound, and then said, "Now he came to our Redstone Gorge and killed so many demon generals without any explanation." Humph. Wanderer Bai interrupted him with a smile. It turns out that Lord Panchong also has relatives in the Dongting Lake. But this matter. After all, Lord of Wei River is our comrade now. Bulsh * T comrade. This time, the person who spoke had a deep and powerful voice. When he opened his mouth, it was like the roar of countless beasts, shaking the ground slightly. Speaking of relatives, Humph. My relatives are in the wild forest. This Li Yunxin was chased by the Xianmen like a stray dog. But he ran into the forest and set a fire to escape. My relatives were also buried in that fire. This person had a leopard head, round eyes, a swallow chin, and a tiger's beard. His body was more than 10 feet tall, looking very powerful and tall. However, the hall was too wide, and the monsters were far away from Li Yunxin, so they couldn't show any oppressive momentum for a while. As soon as he said this, the monsters all echoed him, not caring whether he was a relative or not. If the beasts became demons, they randomly identified those who walked on the ground as their relatives. If the winged insects achieved Taoism, they made a fuss that their relatives were shot down from the sky by Li Yunxin. In short, once they established a relationship with him, they started to quarrel, rubbed their palms, and looked like they were about to pounce, irritable and terrifying. Wanderer Bai squinted his eyes and smiled, covering his mouth with a folding fan. It turns out that Lord Yu also had relatives who were accidentally killed by him. But we also know that he had no choice. Master Bai, do you really believe that he had no choice? Huh. The one who spoke had a slender body, looking like a bamboo pole that had achieved Taoism. However, his body was shockingly agile. With a body the size of an ordinary human, he was jumping on the shoulders and heads of the tall and sturdy monster kings, as if he was in a jungle. While scratching his ears and cheeks irritatedly, he looked at Li Yunxin with a grimace. What abilities does he have? To be able to escape from the pursuit of so many sects like Daotong and Kinzo? In my opinion, wow. They've clearly colluded with the orthodoxies and sword sects to come up with such a ruse. Now they've come to our place to spy on us, so that they can send a message to us. Lord Tongtian, if we don't kill him, we won't let him go. He originally wanted to harm us, who can rest assured now? Ha! Who can rest assured? This monster king's voice was sharp, and he spoke very fast, making people feel uncomfortable. The monster that was stepped on by him stretched out its hand to pull him down, but he avoided it every time, making it even angrier. Therefore they started to clamor, as long as they refined Li Yunxin and divided him among us. Hatred's face was gloomy, and he didn't speak on his throne. Only Wanderer Bai let them do as they pleased. He closed his fan with a snap, and waved his hand at the thin demon king. Human monarch, please don't be impatient. Then he looked at Li Yunxin from afar. Lord Wei River, I didn't expect the monster kings to dislike you so much. Not to mention that you colluded with Daoist Xianmen to make such a ruse. I thought about it. I thought about what you did in the past. And I also feel that your words can't be trusted. Wanderer Bai paced back and forth for a few steps, then turned to look at him. And considering your suggestion, to ask Lord Tongtian to send all these monster kings and monster generals to their deaths, and turn them into resentful demonic energy, I feel that you are even more suspicious. It was because there was some kind of inexplicable aura. Those demons were also stunned along with him. These demons lived in countries, and had their own territories. They hid themselves and lived happily. The demon society was not like that of humans. There were a lot of goods and information circulating. If they did not have the intention to investigate, even if the dynasty outside was turned upside down, it was normal for them not to know. Therefore, Li Yunxin knew that these guys seemed to know everything about the recent events. But most of them just listened to Wanderer Bai's bullshit. In the minds of these idiots, Long Jiu was still a Long Jiu of the transcendent stage. Perhaps a day ago, they did not even know why they were gathered here, and who they were going to fight against. Even such a group of demons could feel a subtle aura that suddenly appeared along with Li Yunxin's words. For example, they felt a sudden panic in their chest. Suddenly, they did not want to talk, and they did not want to look at Li Yunxin in the eyes. They only felt that Long Jiu, who was originally standing alone at the door, suddenly became somewhat dignified and unpredictable. Although this feeling was just a fleeting moment, but there were still some who were quick-witted, and they suddenly realized, maybe this was the dragon aura. But the problem was the seriously injured Long Jiu. Where did he get this kind of aura? Even Hatred, who was sitting on the throne, frowned slightly and stared at Li Yunxin suspiciously for a while. The group of demons quieted down. It was as if a flock of noisy sparrows had suddenly quietened down. Li Yunxin frowned slightly, looking a little impatient. He looked at Hatred. I wanted to help second brother to do something big, so that the demons in the world would no longer be oppressed by Xianmen. But now, at this critical moment where every second counts, I still have to waste time on these bullshit things. Then he turned to look at Wanderer Bai. His eyes were as sharp as two knives, shooting over at the same time. Fine. You want to know if all these idiots in the hall are sent to die? What will happen when Xianmen counterattack after a few years? Then I will tell you now. He raised his hand and pointed at his head. Use your brain, idiot. Other than demons, Taoist priests and swordsmen, can't you see anything else? For example, the emperors of those dynasties. Chapter 365. When he said this, Hatred and Wanderer Bai were slightly stunned and looked at each other. Then the demons were also stunned. After a while, they suddenly burst into laughter, as if they had heard an extremely funny joke. The thin and long demon king, human monarch, bared his teeth and pointed at Li Yunxin. Wow, emperors! Don't you know what those little people are? If you rush over while wearing iron armor, won't you still be torn apart by our children? Hee hee. These days, when we looted the caravans transporting the red soil to Tongtian Swamp, did each caravan have thousands of soldiers escorting it? The demons were of one mind with him at this moment, shouting loudly. Yes, so what? One of my monster generals rushed over and swallowed a dozen of them in one gulp. Then he swung his tail and swept a dozen more. A dozen left palm, a dozen right palm. In the time it took to roll over, they were all scared and ran away. Those mortal soldiers are like paper dolls. Then aren't the emperors of the human world made of flesh and bones? So what if he sent an army? These days, if it weren't for those stinky Taoist priests escorting them, the caravans passing through Redstone Gorge would definitely not be able to return. At this point, there was another clamor. All of them revealed arrogant expressions and ridiculed Li Yunxin in front of them. Li Yunxin calmly let them quarrel for a while, only looking at Wanderer Bai. Wanderer Bai turned his face to Hatred, who was sitting on the throne, and said something in a low voice. Then he looked at Li Yunxin. Demon kings, don't be impatient. Li Yunxin, what do you mean by the emperors of the human world? Li Yunxin smiled and snorted coldly. This kind of thing, if you have a little brain, do you still need to say it? If Black Bai Yanjun doesn't show up, no one can capture the souls of the human world. Then, the emperors of the human world. Which one of them isn't supported by the wish power of millions, or even hundreds of millions of people? Before that, there was Emperor Li, who almost reached the Grand Supreme Realm after his death. In order to capture him, Daotong crippled 3 profound realm and 2 true realm experts. Now, if the emperors in the mortal world are all dead, and Black Bai Yanjun doesn't care about them, how many ghost cultivators will there be in the world? When Wanderer Bai heard what he said, he frowned and shouted, Do you think the Xianmen will just sit back and do nothing? Li Yunxin immediately pinched his throat and imitated his sharp tone. Do you think the celestial sect of wonders will sit back and do nothing? If they didn't know what you fools have in your heads, they would definitely send people to watch over those emperors and have the demons kill them. Then I implore you to use your brain again, to think. What? Being ridiculed by Li Yunxin like this, anger appeared on Wanderer Bai's face. His face twisted. He felt like he was going to explode from anger. But after 3 breaths of time, he still took a deep breath, gnashed his teeth and said, What's so difficult about it? If that monarch of the human world really met with some unexpected mishap and died, the power of wish from millions of people would be enough for him to become a true state body. The wish power of millions of people could make a profound realm expert. If it's a big country like Chun or Lai state, it's more likely to make another emperor Li. On Li Yunxin's face was the smile that made Wanderer Bai so angry that he almost went crazy. He pretended to be patient and patient. Okay, you're finally enlightened. Then what? Tell me more? They were the ones who came to ask Li Yunxin. But now, he was the one who wanted to tell him these things that were guided by Li Yunxin step by step. However, he couldn't shut his mouth right now, because if he did, Li Yunxin would mock him again and say some despicable things. Damn it. Wanderer Bai cursed in his mind. This damn Li Yunxin could provoke the anger in the deepest part of his heart, with every word he said so casually. This was so weird. What kind of weird cultivation method did he practice? Did he cast a spell on himself? Finally, he forced himself to clench his teeth and stared at him fiercely. And then, humph. And then, Daotong would have to use more powerful cultivators to guard against such a horrible emperor. An enlightened Taoist master needs a perfect harmony master to guard against him. And a perfect harmony master needs a profound realm cultivator to guard against him. If it's a big country like Chun, Lai, and Li, each emperor needs 2 profound realm Taoists. There are dozens of big and small dynasties in the world, but there are only 200 to 300 cultivators above the profound realm, and only dozens above the profound realm. Their fighting power will be greatly weakened. Okay, and then, keep talking. Don't stop. Let me see how many things are in your head. As soon as Wanderer Bai finished his words, Li Yunxin immediately pressed him with questions, not even giving him time to breathe or think. Even though the two of them were very far apart, Unfettered White felt that Li Yunxin was right in front of him, pressing her face against his. He even felt that he could feel her scorching breath and overbearing aura. It kept pressing down on him, causing his mind to become muddled and his emotions to become flustered. It was as if all his thoughts were tangled up into a huge mess and were stuffed into his brain randomly. He suddenly shouted 3 times. What then? So what? So what? The folding fan in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter, but he didn't notice it at all. Yazi and all the demon kings present were silent at this moment. They all looked at him. But Wanderer Bai didn't notice it either. His face trembled slightly, and his eyes stared straight ahead. His mouth opened unconsciously, like a fish that was thrown onto the shore. He lost his composure so much that when Hatred coughed and said, "Young Master Bai," in a deep voice, he still couldn't recover from his emotions. At this moment, Li Yunxin strode towards him. As he walked, he looked at Wanderer Bai and said in a fast but strange tone, "Let me tell you. Then, hee, the people you mentioned are only the people that Daotong will use to watch over the emperors and prevent them from dying and becoming ghost cultivators. Besides, they need to double the number, because they don't know if we will also send powerful monsters to assassinate the emperors. In this way, half of Daotong and Kinzo's power will be tied up by the countries in the world. They have shepherded the people on behalf of the Celestials, created dozens of dynasties to manage the world for them, and sent them endless offerings and talents. Now, it's time for them to pay their debts." With an intimidating aura, he walked through the crowd of monsters as he spoke. But the monsters that were threatening to refine him 15 minutes ago now looked at Wanderer Bai, and then at Li Yunxin. They didn't know why Wanderer Bai lost his composure in just a few sentences. What these stupid demons didn't know was that whether it was Li Yunxin's footsteps or the speed of her speech, they all had a special meaning. She adjusted them according to Wanderer Bai's every look, every movement, and even the speed of his breath. When he finally walked in front of White Wanderer and pressed his face against White Wanderer's, Li Yunxin shouted harshly, "Have you ever thought about this, you idiot? With such an advantage that is hard to come by in 10,000 years, and with the decline of the Orthodoxy sword sect, why don't you send these idiots who don't even understand what we are saying to their deaths, so that you can clear the Celestial Gate's defensive forces, as much as possible, so that you can finally attack Cloud Mountain and completely destroy them? You're still dreaming about sharing glory and prosperity with everyone. I said you're a frog at the bottom of a well. Are you still not convinced? What future and recuperation?" Wanderer Bai was dumbfounded by Li Yun's yell, and couldn't say a word. Li Yunqin suddenly turned to look at Hatred. With this war and the death of so many cultivators in Daotong, do you still expect to stop the war and recuperate? The endless war between the monsters in Daotong started 2,000 years ago. Now it's the final battle. After saying this in a stern voice, he stared at Hatred. So Lord Tongtian, now that things have come to this, what's your choice? Hatred was slightly stunned. This was the first time he saw Li Yunqin like this. But it was also the first time he saw Wanderer by like this. At this moment, all the monster kings in the hall began to discuss in a low voice. They seemed to understand every word Li Yunqin said. But when everything was linked together, they who knew nothing about the general situation and the general trend of the world had no idea what Li Yunqin meant. However, when Li Yunqin said that he would send them out as cannon fodder and sacrifice them, these monster kings heard it clearly. But what about the attitude of Lord Tongtian on the throne? Lord Tongtian frowned slightly at this moment, as if he was stumped by Long Jiu's question. And what about the attitude of Wanderer by beside the throne? He was even more astonished. Wanderer by had clearly only said these words, but his eyes were wide open and his eyelids were trembling. It was as if he was daydreaming, and he didn't even bother to pick up the folding fan that never left his hand. It was really so strange. After about 3 breaths, Hatred frowned and coughed again and again. He said in a low voice, "Well, Brother Jiu's words make sense." All the monster kings in the hall immediately looked fierce and shouted, "Is Lord Tongtian really going to listen to Long Jiu's words? Is he really sending us to our deaths?" This voice suddenly overturned the sky and shook the whole hall. It didn't seem like there were dozens of monster kings in the hall, but thousands of them. Hatred hurriedly said, "What are you talking about? Of course not, of course not." When he said that, those simple-minded monster kings got even more angry and shouted again. "But this Long Jiu actually asked Lord Tongtian to send us to our deaths. Lord Tongtian, hurry up and let us eat this kid." These monster kings were said to be the kings and generals under Hatred. But in reality, how could they be like the army of mortals, with a strict hierarchy? Even Shinryu, the lord of all the monsters in the world, was only in name. And these monster kings were more like the leaders of the barbarian tribes, who lived in the territory of an emperor. Most of them were not as intelligent as dragons. Some of the smarter ones, such as Mr. Panchong, Lord Yu, and Lord Renjun, who were the first to challenge Li Yunqin, did not have much experience. They had no interest in the worldly dynasties or the world's power. They only used their limited wisdom on eating, drinking, and fighting. Therefore, at this moment, seeing that the group of demons were agitated, the human monarch jumped up and down on the shoulder of the great demon. He stared fiercely at Li Yunqin and encouraged them to eat up this insignificant dragon Jiu, so that their bodies could be stained with the dragon Qi and become even more powerful. At this moment, Li Yunqin suddenly turned around and suddenly laughed sinisterly. "Eat me?" Then he leaped forward 4 to 5 steps, raised his hand and pointed directly at the Lord Renjun, who was staring at him with a pair of greedy eyes. The robe on his body fluttered violently due to the demon power. "Sure. I'll let you eat. Let's see if you have the life to eat it." After he said this, he roared and pounced forward. Hatred immediately stood up from his throne and shouted sternly, "Don't hurt him." His words were not meant for Li Yunqin, but for the Lord Renjun. But seeing that Li Yunqin had offered himself, how could the Lord Renjun care so much? He was originally a 1,000-year-old white ape, and called himself Lord Renjun. Among the many monster kings, he could be considered as one of the top big monsters. His cultivation had reached the peak of the realm of truth, the level of perfected immortal. Such a monster was originally a feudal lord of an area. Moreover, he was quite intelligent, so he also governed many small monster kings around. He was an important role for Hatred in Yi country's fief, so he was naturally arrogant. At this moment, he first heard that Li Yunqin wanted to send them to die, and then saw that Li Yunqin actually dared to directly challenge him. How could he care about what Yi said? He immediately laughed strangely 3 times, and with a loud and brave voice that did not match his thin body, he shouted, "Lord Tongtian, today, this little kid is courting death, So don't blame me. As soon as his voice fell, the Lord Renjun did not dodge, as if he wanted to forcefully suppress Li Yunxin's momentum. He also pounced towards him. The fight between monsters and demons was not like the fight between Taoist priests and swordsmen, who used many talismans and messy sword auras. In a fight between monsters and demons, apart from a limited number of natural magical powers, it was a head-on fight with an incomparable tyrannical body. It had to be a battle of brute force against brute force, the bombardment of blood and flesh. Only then could it be considered a battle to its heart's content, heroic to the clouds, and convincing the loser wholeheartedly. This white ape was at the peak of the realm of truth, and had sufficient strength. And the monster kings had long known that Long Jiu was only at the realm of transformation, although they heard that he had advanced to the realm of truth. But when he was being chased by Daotong and Kenzo, he was seriously injured and almost fell from his realm. Such a Long Jiu. So what if it was because of the tyrannical body of dragons? The Lord Renjun knew that as long as he exchanged a few blows with Long Jiu, even if he couldn't kill him in one fell swoop, he would still kill him until he lost all his spirit. In this way, the monster kings behind him who had been incited by him would swarm over. At that time, he would tear this Long Jiu alive. Now, it was the eve of the battle with Xianmen. This little Long Heir was a dispensable character who had incurred the wrath of the masses. What else could Lord Tongtian do? These thoughts flashed through his mind in a flash, and the monster kings behind him really did as he expected. All of them stirred up their momentum. Their eyes revealed a murderous glint. They were also ready to pounce. Seeing that both of Li Yunxin's palms were flying towards him, he cackled and shouted, "This lord is going to tear me alive." Ha! Because at this moment, a cloud suddenly rose around Li Yunxin's body. Within the cloud, a godly demon body of over 10 feet suddenly appeared. The appearance of this demon's godly demon body was already within the Lord Renjun's expectations. But at this moment, what caused his heart to be greatly shocked was, suddenly, an incomparably tyrannical force appeared out of nowhere, forcefully freezing his body in midair. At this moment, thousands of thoughts flashed through the Lord Renjun's mind, but in the end, they only converged into 2 sentences: "My life is over." Where did this little Long Jiu get his magical powers from? Following this Li Yunxin's shout of good, in midair, a golden figure flashed past. The 2 of them were already in midair. One of them was surrounded by clouds and mist. The other was surrounded by whistling chilly winds. How could they tell if that golden light was the mysterious light that was stirred up during the battle? Just as the Lord Renjun's figure paused for a moment, the 2 of them passed by each other. Then, blood spurted out from the Lord Renjun's headless corpse with a loud bang, like a fountain that rushed all the way to the roof. At this moment, the demon who was still at the peak of the true state had revealed the true form of the white-haired old ape. His limbs were still twitching violently, as if even until his death, he still couldn't understand. What kind of trick had he fallen into? Not only was his body frozen, even the demon power in his body was suppressed. From the moment the 2 of them exchanged blows to the Lord Renjun's corpse, it was only a breath's time. Hatred hadn't even had the time to sit down after he shouted those words. And those demon kings who were originally planning to follow up had only just stretched their bodies at this moment. But they had already seen the Lord Renjun's corpse. His entire body was covered in steel armor. His mouth was filled with dense fangs, and the antlers on top of his head were towering towards the sky, clutching the head of the Lord Renjun in his hand. His entire body was emitting a powerful aura, as if he was a demon from the 9 underworlds standing in front of them. The group of demons stood dumbfounded on the spot. Then they saw Li Yunxin open his mouth and roar angrily. "You want to eat me?" Countless tiny electric snakes exploded in the clouds around him. "You scavenging for food in the mountains and rolling in the mud. How dare you say this word to me? Are you tired of living for hundreds and thousands of years? Have you forgotten how to write the word death?" With a bang sound, the head of the Lord Renjun in his palm was crushed by him, as he said these few words. The splattered blood and brain matter drenched the few demon kings in front of them, but no one dared to speak anymore. That was the Lord Renjun at the peak of the true state. And he was killed by this Long Jiao. After a while, one of the demons who was slightly more familiar with the Lord Renjun finally stuttered. Tong, Lord Tongtian. Please, please. At this moment, the Lord Renjun was already dead. A wisp of his soul floated up from his corpse. After being stunned for a breath's time, he regained some consciousness, turned around, and was about to escape. But Li Yunxin's eyes were immediately filled with murderous intent, staring straight at the demon king who spoke. Do what decision? With these words, his steel fork-like sharp claws suddenly grabbed and retracted. The muddle-headed soul of the Lord Renjun instantly disappeared in his palm. Just like that. If the group of demons were temporarily stunned by his ferocious momentum and the death of the Lord Renjun. But at this moment, he was truly terrified. Why did they risk their lives to reach the true state? Because the soul of the true state was not destroyed. Even if the body was dead, it was still very difficult to kill it. But at this moment, this Li Yunxin not only killed the Lord Renjun, but also took away his soul. How could these stupid and ignorant demon kings have the mood to guess what kind of magic weapon Li Yunxin had on him? And what kind of supernatural power he used? They immediately turned into a mess, and avoided Li Yunxin, as if they were avoiding the black and white Yama kings. They were afraid that Li Yunxin would become violent again, and tear them apart alive. Who said that Long Jiao was just in the true state? And who said that he was seriously injured? Li Yunxin stared at them for a full 2 breaths of time, until no one dared to look him in the eyes. Only then did he turn around and look at hatred. It seems that second brother is usually too lenient. Li Yunxin took a deep breath, and said word by word. So much so that these bastards under second brother don't even know what it means to be dead, and have their souls destroyed. Second brother told me before that it was not the dragons who were insulted. Second brother's teachings. Li Yunxin snorted. Brother Jiao, remember it. Today, I helped second brother kill this demon who didn't listen to orders and cleaned up the house. If second brother blamed me because of this, I have nothing to say. It was that human king who acted recklessly. How would we dare to offend the dignity of the dragons? Hatred coldly let them worship for a full quarter of an hour before he snorted and said, Fine. You can leave now. Then he looked at Li Yunxin. As for this, whether you want to die or not, ninth brother was just angry that you fools didn't live up to his expectations. So he said it to scare you. But if you do this again, this monarch will really send all of you idiots to the Dark Azura Hall. After hearing this, the group of demons worshipped again. Then they rushed out of the door, as if they were running for their lives. Their footsteps echoed in the corridor for a long time, and no one knew where to go out of the temple. At this moment Wanderer Bai, who had been standing there for a long time, suddenly screamed as if he had just woken up from a dream. Lord Tongtian, don't be fooled by him. Hatred sighed again and shook his head. Young Master Bai, I think it's better not to say it. However, Wanderer Bai had lost all of his previous elegance. He just stared at Li Yunxin and pointed at him. Lord Tongtian, don't you know that your ninth brother is also a painter? Lord Tongtian, do you really believe that your ninth brother is kind and considerate of you and young Dragon Master? He obviously wants to borrow our hands to kill those monster kings, and then kill the people of Daotong Kenzo. Then he can enjoy the resentment and demon power for himself. Lord Tongtian, haven't you heard about what happened in City of Wei? Li Yunxin snorted coldly. He shook his body, and showed his human form again. Then he took a few steps to the side to avoid the blood stains on the ground. He coldly looked at Wanderer Bai. Not long ago, you were arrogant and said that I'm useless. Now you think that I have the ability to enjoy all the resentment and demon power under the eyes of you and my second brother? I asked my second brother to sacrifice those useless and stupid monster kings, for the sake of the rise and fall of the demon race in the world. But because of your selfishness towards me, you provoked those monster kings to besiege me. Now it's hard to do things the way you did before. Li Yunxin looked at him sternly. Now you want to frame me, because of your selfishness. Li Yunxin glared at him and showed anger on his face. You despicable person. If I can kill that whatever monarch, it's not impossible for me to kill you. Hearing his words, Wanderer Bai was slightly stunned. If it was an hour ago, he would definitely sneer and ask Li Yunxin, "Do you really think that you have such great ability?" But now, after seeing him kill the monarch with his own eyes, he didn't dare to say that. This madman dared to kill the subjects of Lord Tongtian in front of Lord Tongtian. But Lord Tongtian didn't blame him. Gritting his teeth, Wanderer Bai stared at Li Yunxin for a while, then suddenly turned to look at Hatred. "Lord Tongtian, we've known each other for 2,000 years. You know me." Hatred shook his head slightly and only said one word, "Forget it." Then he stood up from the throne, clasped his hands behind his back, and left the hall without looking back. Only Li Yunxin and Wanderer Bai were left in the hall. These two demons of the true realm stared at each other. Their gazes seemed to be able to create flames and lightning in the air, cold and gloomy. After staring at each other for more than 10 breaths, Wanderer Bai took a deep breath and took a step back. "You can deceive others, but you can't deceive me." He gritted his teeth and said, "You must have a plan." But Li Yunxin suddenly restrained his expression and smiled. "Even a 3-year-old knows that, right?" He interrupted Wanderer Bai's words. Then he thought for a moment, then looked at him with a smile. The gloomy and fierce expression on his face was completely gone, as if he was looking at an interesting person. "So if you want to know, I can tell you." Then he clasped his hands behind his back, took 2 steps, and turned to look at Wanderer Bai. "You guessed right. Very right. As for me, the reason why I came here was actually to persuade my second brother and the others, to let them send those demons out to die. Then, I'll let those demons fight against the cultivators of the Daotong Kenzo. And then, you're right, I cultivate the Tao of painting. After all these guys die, I'll use a great formation to transform all this resentment into demonic energy. I'll enjoy it all before you use this Guanyuan cave to digest it. At that time, I'll jump from the true realm to the grand supreme great demon. Do you think I'll be afraid of you coming for revenge? You see, I like smart people." Li Yunxin looked at Wanderer Bai with a smile. "You can be considered half a smart person. Since you know my plan and know that I dare to tell you, you should know that I can do it. But what can you do?" Li Yunxin laughed. "You can't do anything to me." After saying this, he clasped his hands behind his back and walked out of the door, laughing wildly, leaving Wanderer Bai in the hall, gnashing his teeth, and holding a talisman in his hand. A quarter of an hour later. "Do you really believe him?" Wanderer Bai stared at Hatred. "But you don't believe me?" At this moment, Hatred was standing behind a very wide table, looking at the map on the table. As a map of this era, the map in front of Hatred was very sophisticated. Mountains, rivers, towns, and villages were marked. There were even markings of valleys, plains, underground rivers, and so on. However, according to the standard of Li Yunxin's era, this map was very simple. It could only be seen as a flat surface. And the flat surface was very distorted, so it couldn't be used to accurately locate one's position. Strictly according to the distance on the map, maybe the former city of Wei should be moved to the city of Little Rock. In fact, Hatred was looking at the deployment of demons gathered from different places on the map. He looked at it for a while and looked up at Wanderer Bai. "Don't make a fuss." He didn't sound like a demon at all, but more like a steady and honest general. "Now is not the time to fight because of personal feelings. And young Master Bai, I'm not stupid." "Then you should know," Wanderer Bai said angrily. "Your 9th brother." "My 9th brother cultivates painting. Previously in the city of Wei, he used a big formation to draw resentment into his body and entered the true state from the transcendent state." Hatred frowned and raised his head. "You don't have to keep talking about these things. As for you worrying about him using us to do things for his own benefit, have I not thought about it?" Hatred straightened up again, playing with a chess piece used as a marker in his hand. He thought for a while, and seemed to think that it was necessary to clarify some things with Wanderer Bai. So he looked at him seriously. "My 9th brother is a smart man. Young Master Bai, you are also a smart man. Smart people always dislike smart people, I know that. But young Master Bai, you don't have to be so anxious to get rid of him. You saw the situation in the hall just now. Those demon kings were top-notch experts in battle. But what about their brains? They almost don't have any. Young Master Bai, you have been by my brother's side for the past 2,000 years, and have done many things. It's not an exaggeration to say that you are the most intelligent among the demons. But young Master Bai, to be honest, how do we compare to Daotong and Kenzo? Wanderer Bai blinked his eyes. After a moment of silence, he said reluctantly, "What?" Hatred smiled gently, and threw the black chess piece in his hand onto the map. The chess piece buzzed for a few rounds and stopped. Young Master Bai, you don't want to say. Because you also know that in terms of intelligence, the people of Xianmen are much better than us. Although the people of Xianmen are not very smart, in terms of strategy, maybe the generals in the Imperial Court of Mortals are more proficient than them. However, the battle between immortals and demons is different from the battle of mortals. In terms of the overall situation, the strategies of Xianmen are enough. So I hope that our people can be smarter. Hatred looked at him sincerely. For example, people like young Master Bai, people like Li Yunxin. I went to see him before to see if he is a smart person. But since young Master Bai is so afraid of him, it means that he is. As for whether he will seek personal benefits for himself, whether he wants to borrow our hands to gather his demon power, what does it matter? Hatred sighed softly. In this world, are there people or demons who don't seek personal benefits? Even if my ninth brother has any ideas, he has to stand on our side and borrow our strength to succeed. Before he takes the last step, our goals are the same. And at the last step, young Master Bai, if you mean my big brother, and so many people can't see through him, and are ordered around by him, I admit my defeat. But the problem is, Hatred looked at him. Do you think we will lose when we are on guard? Wanderer Bai thought for a while and frowned. How is it possible? That's right. Hatred laughed. Besides, my ninth brother may not have bad intentions. Even if he has bad intentions and sees the situation clearly, he may not make a move. Let's be optimistic. This is the overall situation. It's not a fight between two demons, and fighting for territory. If you don't trust a person, don't use him. How can there be a useful person in this world? Wanderer Bai frowned. That's true, but Hatred looked at his hand again and raised his hand to point at it. What is that? Wanderer Bai lowered his head and looked at it. He hesitated for a while and put the talisman away. It's just a talisman. I remember what Li Yunxin said to me just now. But in general, Lord Tongtian has already guessed it. Then he told you just now that he wants to use this opportunity to use the painting formation to gather resentment and transform it into demonic energy for his own use? Hatred smiled faintly. Young Master Bai, you should know what he wants to do after you calm down for a while, right? Wanderer Bai took a deep breath and snorted. Humph. He knows what you and I might think of him. He wants to use the painting formation to gather demonic energy. So he might as well tell you directly. If you came to me earlier and offered this thing to me, saying you found the evidence and wanted to show it to me and so on, you would definitely suffer. That ninth brother of mine is very shrewd. Hatred shook his head. I guess what's recorded in that talisman of yours isn't what you think it is. You don't believe me? Let's take a look. Wanderer Bai was a bit stunned. He looked at Hatred, hesitated for a while, and then took out the talisman. Then he rubbed his fingers and took out the talisman. A clear light flashed. The scene of the conversation between the two people in the hall appeared in midair. However, the scene was blurry and trembling, and the two people's voices were buzzing, so he couldn't hear what they were talking about. Wanderer Bai frowned. How could it be like this? It should be very clear. I remember what he said, the words. Yazi burst into laughter. What's there to be surprised about? It must be my ninth brother's doing. Young Master Bai, my ninth brother knows your temper. You're a ghost cultivator. When you were alive, you were depressed and frustrated. After you died, this frustration became your obsession. That's why you care a lot about people looking down on your intelligence, and that's why you're easily angered. My ninth brother probably knows that you can't swallow your anger just now and still want to deal with him. That's why he purposely told you those things that we've already guessed. Then he knows that you'll write down these scenes and come to me to talk bad about him. Ha ha ha. The more Hatred talked, the more he laughed. As if he was an older brother watching his younger and quick-witted brother's little tricks. And he felt happy because of it. But since you know he's proficient in painting, you should also know that he must have a way to deal with the talisman you might use. That's why if you rushed to me and showed this to me just now, if you were a confused and ignorant person who thought he was smart, he would know that you've made people go against him, and now come to show me these things. However, there's no concrete verbal evidence, only a vague shadow. He would definitely think that you've lost your mind and used such a lowly method to frame him. Wanderer Bai's forehead was full of cold sweat, and he hurriedly shouted, I didn't. Hatred smiled and waved his hand. Of course I know you didn't. But young Master Bai, don't look down on my ninth brother. When he starts to play tricks on people, it's impossible to guard against him. I guess the way he dealt with you was just because he was in a bad mood and made a casual move. But you almost fell into his trap. I once suffered a loss from him in the Pitfall Mountain. I had a fight with that evil king. You'd better control your temper. Hatred lowered his head again and looked at the topographic map on the table. Don't argue with him and focus on the business. You won't be able to gain any advantage from him. Wanderer Bai frowned and his fists clenched. After a while of sulking he said, Okay. Lord Tongtian, if you want to believe him, then just believe him. I don't believe him. I have to keep an eye on him. Once he shows any flaws, I'll make him suffer. After saying this, he turned around and walked out of the door angrily. After he left, Hatred raised his head again and looked at the door. Then he sighed again. Just like that, 15 days had passed. And these 15 days, the 15 days in the terrifying demon's lair, turned out to be the most comfortable and safe 15 days that Li Yunxin had since he left his hometown. Daotong and Kinzo wouldn't come here to kill him, and the demons wouldn't come here to kill him. He gradually realized one thing. That was this seemed to be the norm. Amidst a horde of demons, danger would always exist, surrounding you like the air around you. For example, the demons in the camp. One moment they were eating and drinking, the next moment they could start fighting. But after the fight, they would continue to eat and drink, waiting for the next crisis to come. This was probably the world of demons. He used to live in the human world. The human world had order and justice. Maybe the so-called justice and fairness didn't really exist, but even if it was falsely believed, it could still maintain a relatively good order to a certain extent. So in the human world, living and working in peace was the norm, a matter of course. Encountering unjust disasters and battles was a special situation. This was because many ignorant commoners still stubbornly believed in things like justice. And if one day everyone didn't believe in these things, and felt that there is no such thing in this world, believing in these things is childish, Chinibu is ridiculous, then this was the appearance of the demon world he was in now. Or rather, this was the real appearance of the bigger world he was in. Here, no one believed in those things. There was no mutual recognition between demons and cultivators. Everything was based on naked strength. The strong preying on the weak was eternal justice. So from the moment he entered Wei City, he stepped from the peaceful human world into the world of demons, the world of cultivators, and the real world. The human world was an illusory and special bubble in this real world. Whether it was demons or cultivators, as long as they wanted, they could break it at any time. And life in the real world was like this. No rest, no breathing. Life was in danger at any time, ready to be schemed against or schemed against. Once you died, no one would seek justice for you. The killer stood on the bones and flesh, laughing and enjoying the glory. And the dead, even the noble ones, were just rotten flesh and dry bones. He wondered if those who clamored all day, "There is no justice and fairness in this world. Why should I believe in it?" would regret their previous thoughts when they came to such a world. A world where there was no justice and no one believed in it? They probably wouldn't even have the chance to regret. Li Yunxin stood on the white jade stairs in front of the hall, squinting at the sparks of fire in the distance, thinking like this. These days there were more and more fires. There were nearly 10,000 demons gathered here. There were so many demons in Yi country, and the surrounding land. As for these fiendish demons, they would disperse and attack the caravans that were transporting the red soil to Tongtian swamp. Li Yunxin saw some of the spoils of war they brought back, something mined from Hongling and other mining areas in Chengdu to replenish Yunshan's earthy aura. But it was really just soil. It was loose and crimson in color. There was nothing unusual about it. He had studied a wide range of subjects in the past, but not science and engineering, so he didn't know what mysteries were hidden in this thing. He had stayed in Chengdu in Yu country, and knew that half of the young adults in Chengdu were mining this thing. Since those people were still safe and sound after mining for so many years, it probably wasn't some terrible material he thought it was. Could it be that the so-called earthy aura was just a cover? In reality, Yunshan didn't need this thing? He thought silently for a while, and noticed a person walking in this direction in the distance. This palace was next to an underground river, and originally had no road. But these days, some demon kings would occasionally come to the front of the hall to make a fuss about some things, so they slowly made a road. And now on this road, there was a woman. Li Yunxin's eyesight was very good. He saw that this woman was dressed in white, and had her hands behind her back. It was autumn and the weather was cool. Thus, this person also wore a thick white cloak, and the fur collar covered the side of her face. She looked cute and naive, but when she walked, her clothes fluttered and she looked very elegant. Her face was also very beautiful, but her eyebrows were slightly thick and slanted, adding a bit of heroic spirit. This kind of appearance, and this kind of aura definitely couldn't be an ordinary demon. But since she was a great demon, and he had never seen her before, then she should be a new demon king, who had come to discuss business with hatred. Li Yunxin narrowed his eyes and looked for a while, then walked to the side of the corridor, and continued to think about his matters. After a dozen breaths, the woman in white walked to the front of the hall. This palace was easy to enter but hard to leave. Thus, she didn't need much effort to step on the steps. She walked a few steps in a dignified manner, and passed by Li Yunxin. So she stopped. Li Yunxin glanced at her, and found that this woman's black and white eyes were also staring at him without blinking. He frowned slightly, because these days he was annoyed by women. Strictly speaking, the two of them weren't female humans, but female demons. Whether it was Red Lady's deep love, or by Yunxin's unpredictable attitude, it wasn't a happy thing for him. Or rather, he wouldn't be happy with anything that he wasn't good at least not now. Thus he moved to the side and said in a deep voice, "What's the matter?" The woman stared at him for a while. Suddenly he smiled and said, "Ninth brother, you were born with a good body." Chapter 367. Her voice was special. There was a woman's sweetness, but there was also a man's clarity. It was hard to tell if it was a vigorous male voice, or a low and soft female voice. But it wasn't unpleasant. Instead, it gave people a strange sense of comfort. She was also tall, standing tall, almost as tall as Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin was slightly stunned. Then he realized that on that night, the night when he fought with the ninth young master, who possessed hatred in the city of Wei, hatred mentioned that he had a third sister. Third sister Chao Feng. A thought flashed through Li Yunxin's mind, and she immediately relaxed her brows. Then he blinked. A slightly surprised, shy, and kind smile appeared on his face. "Ah, third sister? I just heard recently that third sister's fief is at Demon Cliff, and she calls herself Demon Lord." Li Yunxin walked 2 steps to the side of the woman and smiled affectionately. "But I never thought third sister was so beautiful. Compared with third sister, those fairies in Daotong Kenzo are all evil beasts." Hearing his words, the woman pursed her lips and smiled. Half of her fair face was hidden under the fluffy fur collar. Then she looked at Li Yunxin with a reproachful expression. "You little guy, you have a sweet mouth." As she said this, she raised her hand from under the cloak, and stretched out a slender finger. She poked Li Yunxin's forehead. It was like an elder sister poking her younger brother's forehead and asking Li Yunxin to raise his head slightly. But Li Yunxin was a great demon in the real state. Although he looked friendly when facing another great fiendish demon, he was extremely wary on the inside. But under such circumstances, he was poked by this woman's finger. He had wanted to dodge, but just as he was about to dodge, a fleeting feeling of powerlessness suddenly struck him. For example, the people under the snow-capped mountains were powerless against the rolling avalanche, or the people in the raging sea were powerless against the raging tide. At that moment, the feeling of powerlessness stunned him for a moment. So it was really hit. This was pressure. It was even more powerful than when he first met Shinryu. This was the second time he had experienced this feeling in the past few days. The first time was when that Kinzo's profound realm cultivator appeared in Little Rock City. The second time was now. His eyes widened slightly, and he was stunned for a moment. Then the woman grabbed his hand and smiled. "What are you waiting for? Come with me to see your second brother." After saying that, she pulled Li Yunxin away. Just like an elder sister from an ordinary family meeting her younger brother, whom she had not seen for a long time. Li Yunxin could only heave a sigh of relief and follow her. His third sister, Chao Feng, was actually this strong. But no matter what he was thinking, this woman looked easygoing and gentle. On the way to the hall, he held Li Yunxin's hand and asked her some questions casually. Li Yunxin felt that it was ridiculous after hearing it at this time and place. How did ninth brother spend his time at the Wei River? She turned to look at Li Yunxin with a smile as they walked. "Did you read some books? Although you and I are big demons, we still need to understand the principles. If we are like those ordinary demon kings who are muddle-headed, we can't be a role model for all demons in the world." Li Yunxin was stunned for a moment before he said, Yes, I will remember." The woman smiled again. "Look at you. What's wrong? Are you scared and panicking? I heard a few days ago that you were chased by Daotong and Kenzo, and I was also panicking. My poor little brother was besieged by a group of stinky Taoists. I don't know how much he suffered. I thought every day, God bless me, don't let anything bad happen to my little brother in the hands of those people. Now that I see you in this state, safe and sound, I can finally relax." Li Yunxin opened his mouth, but could only say, "Thank you for your concern, third sister. Thank you for your concern." He was usually the best at putting on this kind of hypocritical expression. But now, this woman, if she was also pretending, her martial arts were not inferior to his. What was she thinking? What did she want to do? Countless thoughts flashed through Li Yunxin's mind. While thinking, he carefully listened to the woman's words, hoping to catch some useful details. But when they walked to the door of Hatred's room, they didn't catch anything useful. The woman didn't stop. She reached out and opened the door, and then saw Hatred in the room. In this splendid palace, every room was strangely large, and Hatred was at the end of the room, behind the table, hands behind his back, thinking about the map on the table. When he heard the sound, he raised his head. He was a little surprised at first, then said loudly, "You're here." While saying, he strode to the door. Li Yunxin saw his expression. There was no surprise or enthusiasm, only anxiety and eagerness. This seemed to mean Hatred and his third sister, Chao Feng, had met each other before. Not only had they met, but they also had frequent contact. Hence, now that they met again, he wasn't as surprised as Li Yunxin. Instead, he went straight to the point and directly talked about the matter. "I don't understand the recent layout of Xianmen. I was just waiting for you to come and see. Why did it take so long?" Hatred's words had some kind of friendly reproach, without any pretense. The woman also led Li Yunxin into the door, and let go of his hand. Then she turned around and closed the door. Like a secular person, she closed the door herself, without using any demonic power. Then she turned around and untied the belt of her cloak. There was a little trouble in the Pitfall Mountain, so it took a few days. She took off the cloak and handed it to Li Yunxin. Then she stepped forward and welcomed Hatred. The two hugged without hesitation, and patted each other's back heavily. After they separated, the woman said again, But fortunately it was done. What's the situation here? Off to the side, Li Yunxin was already slightly stunned. The woman took off the cloak, and he glanced at it. Then he saw her chest. In this era, there was no underwear like in his time, and some women still wrapped their breasts. So it was normal for the chest to be flat. And this woman was wearing a man's outfit, arrow sleeves and a wide skirt. This was also common, many heroines in Jianghu would do the same. But the following hug with Yazi, he couldn't understand it at all. While he was in a daze, Hatred and the woman had walked side by side to the desk, slightly bent over, and carefully looked at the layout for a while, then whispered to each other. But Li Yunxin was left alone here. In these 10 days, it was the first time he entered Hatred's study. In fact, he wanted to talk to the 9th young master at night. The 9th young master attached himself to Hatred's body, and only appeared at night. And Li Yunxin also used these 10 days to figure out the rules of the demon servant's shifts in the hall. In fact, he could walk freely in this hall, as long as he didn't go out. However, Hatred seemed to want to prevent the 9th young master from doing anything unexpected. Every night, he locked himself in the room and set up a prohibition. Even if Li Yunxin wanted to find him, he couldn't find him. He originally planned to break the prohibition of hatred in the next 1 or 2 days, but unfortunately, he encountered this thing today. He was stunned for a while looking around. He found a wide chair and put the woman's thick cloak on it. Then he thought for a while and walked a few steps in the room. With his hands behind his back, he pretended to look at the paintings hanging on the wall. But those paintings were not treasures. They were just decorated with gold and silver, and could be regarded as shiny objects. After a quarter of an hour, the woman talked with Hatred for a while, and then looked up at Li Yunxin. Then she said to Hatred, "Ask 9th brother to come and see. Didn't you say he was very smart? When I saw him just now, I also felt he was smart." Hatred thought for a while and nodded. Then he raised his voice to Li Yunxin. "9th brother, come here. Since your big brother has come and said something, come and see. 2nd brother didn't ask you these things before, because he was waiting for your big brother to make a decision." Li Yunxin turned around. A serious look of surprise was written on his face. "Big brother?" He looked at Hatred, and then at the woman, only to see the woman winking mischievously, and saying with a smile, "What 9th brother? Do you still think I'm your 3rd sisters?" Hatred also laughed. "Your big brother likes to play tricks on people. But he is born like this. If you want to know why, you should ask Dragon Lord." Li Yunxin was stunned for a while, and then said, "So it's big brother?" He blinked, and stared at him as he walked over. "Big brother, forgive me for saying the wrong thing. You said I'm pretty, and I like it. Forgive what?" This, Longda Chionyo, said with a smile. "You know your 3rd sister calls herself the evil lord. Do you know what I call myself?" He looked like a beautiful woman, and his voice was also like a woman's. His mannerisms were even more like a woman's. But now he called himself Big Brother, which made Li Yunxin feel very awkward. But he hid this strange feeling in his heart, and only let out a sigh. "9th brother, you still don't know. In front of others, you should call me Young Dragon Lord. Among my brothers and sisters, they call me Zither Lady. My name in the secular world is Bailey Qinshin. 9th brother and I are also fated to have the word Exine in our names." He tilted his head and looked at Li Yunxin. "But the name Chunyo sounds stupid, and I don't like it. I'm going to get angry if you call me like this." "Yes, Zither Lady." Li Yunxin took a deep breath and smiled. 9th brother understands. "That's good." Longda pointed at the map. "Your 2nd brother told me that you are much smarter than my good-for-nothing little white. Then come and see what Xianmin is going to do." As he spoke, Li Yunxin had already walked to the side of the table. The 3 people were all Long Sun's blood brothers. Under such a situation, looking at a map and discussing war matters together, it seemed like a touching scene of sharing a common enemy. But in Li Yunxin's heart, he was already on full alert. Every single hair on his body stood on end. Too scary. Right at this moment, there couldn't be a more dangerous situation than this in this world. Hatred was a demon that had reached the peak of the mystical realm. the second level of the mystical realm. This kind of cultivation was rare in the world. Even in Daotong and Kenzo, there were only a handful of them. And Long de Chionyo was at the peak of the mystical realm. The mystical realm. In the orthodoxies and sword sects, such a cultivation wasn't even enough to be counted on one hand. He was the first mystical realm peak that Li Yunxin had seen with his own eyes. One more step, and he would be in the grand supreme realm. Now he was sandwiched between these two great demons. But this wasn't what scared him the most. What he was really afraid of was the behavior of these two demons. In the past, he dealt with the ninth young master. The ninth young master was cruel. He was also shocked. But he wasn't particularly afraid. Because although the ninth young master was cruel, he was pure. The emotions in his heart were written on his face. He was a very easy demon to understand. Even if he was moody, but after getting along with him for a long time, he would know where his reverse scale was. But hatred, he was born mighty and honest, and the way he did things was also mighty and honest. But the whole world knew about hatred's cruel reputation. This reputation couldn't have come from a rumor, right? This meant that from the first time Li Yunxin met him until now, he had never revealed his true nature. Instead, he behaved the complete opposite of his nature. It was very difficult to see through this kind of person, but compared to Long De Chionyo and Guqin Jun, hatred was like heaven and earth. Li Yunxin at least knew that hatred might be pretending, and he also knew about hatred's cruel reputation. But what about Long De now? What did the cultivators, demons, and mortals of the world say about Long De? They didn't have any impression. They didn't even have a slightly intuitive impression. This meant that he kept a low profile and rarely leaked information. But this also caused him to lose a lot of incense. But under such circumstances, he was still at the peak of the mystical realm. Looking at the way he behaved now, every move he made was like a gentle and kind mortal woman. Li Yunxin couldn't see any pretentiousness. This was what scared him the most. Demons shouldn't be like this, but she was. Her whole body was full of flaws, but there were no flaws to be found. How would you know if she was pretending, or if she was really like this? Li Yunxin took a deep breath and forced all these thoughts back to his heart. Then he forced himself to focus all his attention on the map. Under the gaze of the two big demons, he stared at the map for a long time before his attention was really attracted. If there were no mistakes in the layout of the mystical gate, there was indeed a problem. Li Yunxin wasn't good at the art of war. He wasn't good at it in his previous life. And he wasn't good at it in this life either. Although people praised him for his intelligence, no matter how smart a person was, he couldn't express his brilliant opinion on a completely strange thing without learning. But what he saw now, even if he didn't have any experience, he could see that something was wrong. Chapter 368. The map showed the location of Tongtian Swamp's Lake of Tongtian. It was to the north of the Yi Kingdom, near the Li Kingdom. The Yi Kingdom was actually a long road. Thus, even though it was to the north, it was not far from here. Cloud Mountain was going to land in Tongtian Lake. Thus, if they wanted to guard Cloud Mountain, they should place their forces near Tongtian Lake. However, what was marked on the map was that dozens of sects from the orthodoxies and sword sects had set up their bases between Redstone Gorge and Skyfall Lake. Some were even closer to Redstone Gorge. Only a few heavenly caves had formed a few lines of defense near the heavenly lake. They were separated from each other by hundreds of miles and looked like a sparse fence. There were also 10 demon camps in the map. 5 of these camps worked together with Redstone Gorge to surround the dozens of sects encampments. The other 4 camps surrounded Sky-Piercing Lake. Before the battle had even started, the people from the orthodoxies and sword sects had already been surrounded. After waiting for Li Yunxin to look for a quarter of an hour, Hatred asked in a deep voice, "Ninth brother, what do you think?" Li Yunxin straightened up and shook his head. "To tell you the truth, second brother, I can't see it. When it comes to war, arranging troops, I think any general in the mortal army is 100 times better than me." Li Yunxin smiled bitterly. "I've never learned this, so my opinion has no value. In my opinion, We should go to the Yi Kingdom's military camp and grab a few generals and ask them to speak. Hatred and Zijuan looked at each other. Then Hatred smiled. Look, I asked young Master Bai. He raised his hand and gave me a few pointers full of vigor. Now when he asked our ninth brother, he said he was not as good as a mortal general. Young Dragon Lord, to put it bluntly, our ninth brother is indeed a bit more brilliant than young Master Bai. I've spoiled little by all these years. Zijuan smiled sweetly. But ninth brother is right. We're not good at these things. On the other hand, the generals in the secular world, although they have never been on the battlefield, at least they have read military books. Hatred sighed. They've already been caught. He had already asked. But what they said was similar to what we thought. The main force of the mysterious sect went deep into our encirclement. Moreover, the defense at Tongtian Lake was weak. It was practically suicide. According to the general's words, perhaps the person who set this up had never been to war before. Or you want to die. But you also know that the secular dynasty is also a part of the Xianmen sect. How could there be no one among them who knows how to arrange troops? As far as I know, there are many cultivators in the Grotto Heaven sects who used to serve in the army and then came out into the world. Furthermore, a few of them have experienced the Qing Kingdom's destruction of Yi. They truly understand military matters. So, it doesn't make sense. Hatred shook his head. This is difficult. Li Yunqin thought about it and hesitated for a moment before he spoke. However, his voice was low, and he spoke slowly. Second brother, what do you think about the matter I mentioned earlier? Hatred looked at Li Yunqin, and then at Qin Jun. This matter, the young dragon master has to decide. Then, he repeated what Li Yunqin had said. Sacrificing the demon kings, fighting a decisive battle, and so on. Hearing this, Qin Jun's eyes widened slightly. She looked like a surprised girl. Ninth brother, you can't do this. She looked at Li Yunqin. We are dragons. What are dragons? They are the royal family of the demons. She stretched out her slender finger and pointed at the topographic map. She looked at Li Yunqin. No matter how the dragon master sees us, or what she will do to us, she is still the common master of all the demons in the world. Since she is the common master, she has the responsibility to protect the demons in the world. Why did the demon kings on the map come to Yi Kingdom? He's here to help us fight this battle. If the battle is fierce and they die in battle, then so be it. But if we deliberately send them to die, is this what the dragons would do? Qin Jun sighed slightly. I know you used to be a human, but now that you are dragons, don't have the same thoughts as before. Your second brother sent me a letter a few days ago saying, you are worried that we will swallow you up? She suddenly said a bunch of righteous words, like a decent mortal gentleman. Li Yunqin was stunned for a long time. What was she doing? When she said the last sentence, Li Yunqin was even more shocked. He didn't know what to think, so he was stunned for a while. Seeing his expression, Qin Jun, she also paused and stared at him. In her eyes, there seemed to be helplessness, regret, heartache, and other emotions intertwined. It was as if she was really pitying a little brother who was letting his imagination run wild. Then, she walked in front of Li Yunqin, tilted her head, and looked at him with a smile. Come tell me, what are you thinking in your heart, child? Why would you have such a terrifying thought? Then, she poked Li Yunqin's chest with her hand and said, I know you killed my ninth brother, but it's nothing. Your second brother must have told you that ninth brother isn't dead at all. Dragons cannot be killed. But now that there's a clever you, I'm happy. I've been happy since the first time I saw you. But think about it, if my brothers and sisters really wanted to eat something, why would they wait until now? My ninth brother was still at the transcendent state. Didn't he eat it as soon as he opened his mouth? She smiled and sighed. Kid, you must have experienced a lot of terrible things. Therefore, when you see someone, you have to be on guard and think the worst. But we are your elder brothers and sisters. How can there be an elder brother or sister who would harm their younger brother or sister for no reason? As Li Yunqin listened to him, not only did he not feel the slightest bit of warmth, but he felt a chill all over his body. It was even more frightening than facing a cold and malicious threat. His whole body was tense, but he didn't show it on his face, and forced a smile. He stared at Chonyo's face, not letting go of any slight expression or movement, hoping to find a flaw. But there was still nothing. So he knew he might have encountered an unprecedented and terrifying enemy. Seeing him like this, Zither Master smiled again. You're imagining things again, Then let me ask you. When your second brother went to Dongting to see you, did he eat you? Did he save you from the hands of Kunwuzi? When your second brother was in the city of Wei, did he eat you again? Did he tell you something about the Dragon Lord, so that you could have the upper hand? Let me ask you again. The Kinzo Taoist in the mysterious state that you hid in the city of Little Rock has arrived. Was it your second brother who forced that swordsman to retreat? He sighed softly. Your second brother has done so much for you, but you still suspect that your brothers and sisters are going to eat you. Is that reasonable? Li Yunxin took a deep breath. It's my fault. Zither Master shook her head. It's not your fault. It's the world's fault. Those heartless cultivators and those stupid demons have made this great world into such a mess. But the world is bad. But our hearts must be good. She lowered her head slightly, looking into the eyes of Li Yunxin, who also lowered his head. You must remember this. No matter what you do or what means you use, even if you use bad means, even if you have no other choice, you must have good thoughts in your heart. You must know that what you do is to make the world better, not worse. We are all living in this world. When the world is good, we will be good. Ninth brother, do you understand? I understand. Li Yunxin calmed his breath and adjusted his heartbeat. He wanted to make himself look calm and sincere, but also a little reluctant. But I still need some time to think about it. Zither Master should know. I have experienced many dangerous things in the past. If I want to be like Zither Master, peaceful, I still need some time. I know. Zither Master gently patted his shoulder. Think about it slowly, don't be afraid. Hatred had a smile on his face from beginning to end, watching the two talk. He did not express any opinion. Then a thought jumped out of Li Yunxin's mind. This was a thought he had pondered for many days, but he felt that it was not the right time to bring it up. He had been looking for an opportunity, but now he suddenly realized the opportunity had come. So he raised his head and looked at Chonyo. Zither Master. In fact, I have an idea about the situation of the Xianmen battle formation. But I didn't dare to say it before, because as Zither Master said, I was wrong and always mistook brother and sister's good intentions for evil intentions. I always thought that if I said it, would second brother think that I had other plans? Would he be even more suspicious of me? Li Yunxin slowly and calmly said. But, after listening to Zither Master's words, although I may not fully believe it, but since Zither Master revealed her true feelings to me then, I might as well take the risk and bring it up. If the kinship of those brothers and sisters that Zither Monarch mentioned is real, I'm sure they'll agree to let me do this, to help our dragon clan. He could not see through Zither Master's plan, but since he could not see through it, he might as well beat her at her own game. Sure enough, after he said this, Hatred and Chonyo looked at each other. Then Zither Master smiled and looked at him. Ninth brother said so much. What do you want to do? Li Yunxin straightened his body, took a deep breath, and pointed at the map. We do not understand the Daotong Kinzo's tactics, personnel and goals. Instead of staring at the map and guessing, it is better for me to personally go to the Xianmen battle formation and find out the truth. Hearing his words, the two profound realm great demons were slightly surprised. Then Hatred frowned. You? Go to the Xianmen battle formation? They are about to capture you. That is because they did not talk to me. Li Yunxin smiled coldly. Both sides did not communicate properly. And that is because Daotong and Kinzo do not think that I am qualified to sit down and talk. But now it is different. The demons besieged Cloudy Mountain. They cannot be careless. I will rely on the power of the demons and dragons battle formation to talk to them. So they cannot kill me like a normal demon king. Zither Master seemed to be interested in his proposal. She closed her eyes and thought for a while, then opened them again. Ninth brother, how do you want to talk? Just say, I want all of you to die. Li Yunxin's eyes shot out two rays of cold light. Saying that I am among the demons is actually a false pretense. I only want to gather information about you and arrange your troops. After I learned a lot of information, I told you what I said just now. Those words. I will go deep into Daotong and Kenzo to gain their trust, and then spy on them and so on. In fact, they are all lies. Li Yunxin smiled. The people of the celestial sect will definitely not believe me after hearing these words. As a demon, how can I stand on their side? But I have 3 reasons. Li Yunxin looked at his 2 brothers. The first reason is that I am the only bloodline of the Sword Saint and the Calligrapher Saint in this world. The second reason is that Bai Yunxin and Red Lady both have feelings for me. But my 2 brothers, in order to become stronger, want to devour the dragon soul inside Red Lady's body. My 2 brothers, in order to have new members of the dragon's battle formation, want to have sex with that Bai Yunxin. Everyone knows that if a female demon is pregnant, it is equivalent to a dead one. A new demon will rise from her corpse. And someone broke my realm, so I also have feelings, so I, who was originally a human, fell out with the demons. Hatred thought for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "These are not good excuses." Li Yunxin laughed. Then there is the third reason. The first 2 are all excuses. The third is my real purpose. I cultivate the painting Tao. I have the ability to transform dead souls and resentment into demon power and absorb it. And when I go to the celestial sect, I will indeed reveal the demon's layout to them. After I know the layout of the celestial sect, I will indeed reveal their layout to you. Therefore, you will definitely fight until both sides suffer, and corpses will be everywhere. And at that time, I will reap the benefits. Li Yunxin smiled sinisterly. Not everyone in the celestial sect is a fool. They will inevitably think of this layer, and will have such worries. And I will also make them believe that this is my real intention. Then, those arrogant Taoist priests and swordsmen will automatically see through my intention to reap the benefits, and know that I want to be a double-sided spy. Then, they will want to use this intention of mine to set up a trap for us demons. But at that time, I will already know a lot of information about them, and what we need to do is not really to take down Yunshan. We only need to lead the dead souls into this Guanyuan crypt, and let enough cultivators die. With this information, it will be enough to achieve this goal. After saying all these in one breath, Li Yunxin stood by the table, looking at Hatred and Chunyo in silence. The 2 great fiendish demons pondered for a full 15 minutes. Then Hatred smiled mysteriously. This is an overt plot. Ninth brother, oh ninth brother, you are really very shrewd. You said all these words. Do zither Jun and I believe you or not? He smiled, sighed, and shook his head. It is good to say that you do not have those intentions. It is good to say that you only said your real intention, and used this to set up a trap. Really? Ha 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 ha, good job, Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin smiled. Then second brother, do you believe me or not? Do you want me to do it or not? Chapter 369. Hatred turned his head. What does Zither Monarch think? Zither Monarch smiled. Ninth brother is one of us. If I don't believe him, do I have to doubt him? Then she looked at Li Yunxin. But ninth brother, I am only worried about your safety. Li Yunxin responded with a smile. What is without risk? Now that I am staying in this hall, doing nothing and letting us guess in confusion. When the battle comes, will it not be dangerous? He paused and stopped smiling. Looking at Zither Monarch's eyes that were prettier than ordinary women, he said sincerely, on the battlefield, Zither Monarch and second brother are 100 times better than me. Even a mortal general would be 100 times better than me in a military tent. I am only good at manipulating people's hearts and planning, and going to Xianmen is where I will be useful. I was harmed by Xianmen, but the demons saved me and protected me. How can I go to Xianmen? Zither Monarch clapped her hands. Ninth brother, well said. Since ninth brother had such determination, why would his elder brothers and sisters be worried? Then, we will agree to your request. Li Yunxin was slightly surprised. This was the second goal that he had to accomplish. But in fact, he was prepared to go through twists and turns, and use various methods. But now, the Zither monarch actually agreed to it. He frowned. Does Zither monarch really believe me? Zither monarch smiled warmly. I should believe ninth brother. But ninth brother should know that there are some bad rumors about you. As for other things, the elder brothers and sisters could turn a deaf ear to them. But this matter is related to the fate of the demons in the world. So if I just say that I believe you, ninth brother will feel that it is not appropriate. Li Yunxin heaved a sigh of relief. Understood. He thought again and slightly puffed out his chest. Zither monarch, please enlighten me. After saying this, hatred stole a glance at Zither monarch. Li Yunxin noticed his gaze. But because he noticed it, he felt that it was a little strange. In his mind, Yi and Zither master were both acting out a play of deep brotherly love, just like he himself was acting out the same play. And when he said, Zither monarch, please bestow the technique, what he would bestow wouldn't be anything good. It was a restriction. For example, if the opponent willed it, it would explode on the spot. Without the cooperation of the body's owner, it would be even more difficult than killing a person. He took the initiative to make such a request. Zither monarch should be more than happy to accept it. But what was that look in hatred's eyes? Li Yunxin could tell that hatred was worried that Zither Jun would let him go if he hadn't lost his ability to read people's expressions. He was a little confused. Could it be that this Zither lady, Longda, and this peak profound realm outsider were really as kind and gentle as they seemed to be? Moreover, that wanderer Bai was indeed arrogant and egotistical, as if he was pampered. Based on these 2 points, there was a high probability that Long De would be entangled by White Wanderer tonight after a short separation. And this probability would plummet after tonight. Tonight, he had to see the 9th young master. In this demon camp, the 9th young master was the easiest to break through. And the reason why Li Yunxin dared to take action in this lair occupied by 2 profound realm great demons was that it might be a coincidence, or there might be some inside story. This temporary imperial residence of hatred might be one of the Octave Treasure's ancient scroll. Even if it wasn't, it must have a great connection with one of the Octave Treasure's ancient scroll. When Li Yunxin was in the Pitfall Mountain, he was taken into the Evil King's painting of Misty Slave. Id Mao. The Evil King had a fight with him in the painting, but there was a big realm and 3 small realms between them, and Li Yunxin survived, because it was the work of the painting saint. And as the most proficient person in painting in the world, Li Yunxin quickly grasped and used the qi in the Octave Treasure's ancient scroll, and then used the magic treasure to protect himself. 16 days ago, when he walked into this splendid palace, he also felt a familiar qi. So he realized that this might be another Octave Treasure's ancient scroll. And because of this, he used the qi in the room, and used the golden body to suppress Bai Yunxin's all-out attack. And then he used the same qi to seal the demon power of the human monarch in the palace, and killed him on the spot. After these 2 things, Li Yunxin was also sure that hatred didn't know the correct way to open this treasure. Just like the Evil King, hatred didn't know what he did in the palace. But it was very strange. As Li Yunxin walked slowly in the splendid corridor, he frowned slightly, and thought that if this palace was indeed one of the Octave Treasure's ancient scroll, then it meant that among the 3 paintings that had appeared in the world, 2 of them were in the hands of demons. The Evil King, and it seemed that the painting saint had given it to him, was used to suppress the huge skeleton under the Pitfall Mountain. Now this scroll was in the hands of hatred. The relationship between the art saint and the fiendish demons was truly deep. Then, how much of the so-called truth about Shinryu, the Rock King, and the 3 saints 2,000 years ago, that he heard from Bai Yunxin was true? He took a deep breath and stopped by the window. Looking out through the window, he saw the sparks of fire on the vast underground plain, and began to think about the conversation between Yi and Zither Master just now. Since he was going to be a spy for the celestial sect, he had to give them some reliable information. Therefore, hatred and Zither King told him many things in the study. They seemed to be ideas that the two had discussed before. In Li Yunxin's opinion, it was reasonable and there were no flaws. But he didn't feel amazed either. This meant that the battle plan that the two came up with was within the scope of Li Yunxin's knowledge, under the premise that he was almost illiterate in military affairs. He didn't think that hatred and Zither King could annihilate most of the cultivators of the celestial sect in this Guanyuan crypt. They must be hiding something else. For example, something like a trump card. The demons had always been at a disadvantage against the celestial sect. Now the underdog was attacking the strong, and there was also the Freemasonry. If they didn't have anything powerful, it was more likely that they would be wiped out. Then Zither King said that he had something to do at the Pitfall Mountain, and was delayed. In the Pitfall Mountain, there was a huge skeleton. That skeleton had devoured the evil king's profound realm soul. Did the matter that Zither King was doing have anything to do with that skeleton? So all kinds of thoughts were running wild. He thought for nearly an hour. Then he walked around. This was his habit for the past 10 days. Walking in the corridor while thinking. The demon servants in the hall could all see him, and would carefully avoid him. In that case, someone would report this habit to his second brother. Then, as usual, around the time of the Su hour, the demon servants in the corridor became fewer. According to Li Yunxin's observations these days, this meant that an hour ago, hatred had sealed himself in the study. In fact, he had sealed the 9th young master in the study. Since their master had nothing else to say, then after an hour, the demon servants had finished their work and slowly dispersed. Usually at this time, Li Yunxin would have returned to his room. But tonight, he stretched out his hand and stirred in the air. Therefore, the chi activity was guided by him. With his true realm cultivation base, he created a real body and walked back to his room in his place. As for his original body, it silently hid in the darkness. No one knew. Chapter 370. After half an hour, Li Yunxin appeared in front of Hatred's study. The hall was illuminated by a mysterious light. Therefore, at night, the corridor was also bright. It was even brighter than the corridors of ordinary residences on the ground. He waited for a while cautiously. During this time, several demon servants passed by him, but they didn't find anything unusual. But Hatred's study was very quiet, without any sound. This might be because of the prohibition. Then Li Yunxin, who had disappeared, took out a pen and paper from her sleeve. At his level of cultivation in painting, he only needed to use his hand as a pen to draw in the air. But he couldn't make any mistakes tonight. He had to make sure nothing went wrong. He couldn't knock on the door and walk in casually. If the 9th young master still held a grudge against him and told Hatred about this, his plan would have many problems. But on the other hand, he had an intuition. The 9th young master should not be living a happy life now. In the past, the 9th young master could wander around at night. But now, at least in the 10 days since he came to this cave, the 9th young master never showed up at night. In a sense, he seemed to be imprisoned by hatred. Imprisoned in his body, imprisoned in the study at night. While thinking about this, he took out the magic paper and put it on the door of Hatred's study. The door was made of wood. It was dark inside, as if the lights had been turned off and people had gone to sleep. However, when Li Yunxin put the magic pen on the paper again, he felt a terrible power coming from the door. The power came from the whole palace. The chi activity of the palace was guided into the prohibition, which sealed the people and things inside the door. This restriction was like a waterfall that flowed down from the sky. It covered the things behind the curtain of water. Now, if Li Yunxin wanted to see the scene behind without attracting attention, he had to follow the water flow, or chi activity. The first time he came into contact with the aura of the Octave Treasure's ancient scroll in the Pitfall Mountain, he was shocked by its terrifying grandeur. That feeling was still lingering in his mind. It had been a long time since then, and he had been trying to study more profound painting techniques. Now, it seemed like it was time to test the results. He wanted to open a window in this restriction that no one would notice. The magic pen landed on the paper. He slowly drew out a line. This ink line seemed to be of uniform thickness, and there was nothing special about it. But in fact, When Li Yunxin was moving the brush, he was observing the flow of qi on the door at every moment, and at the same time, he was adjusting the demonic power he injected in a shorter time, so that the two auras could be perfectly connected. It was a strenuous step, but he realized he could manage it. It took him a quarter of an hour to draw this line. Then, sweat seeped out of his forehead, and white mist seeped out of his hair. Next, he drew another 3 lines. Together with the previous one, they formed a square. He took a deep breath, turned his hand, and put the brush into his sleeve. Then, the hand holding the magic paper trembled slightly. The paper turned into a clear light and disappeared. The door was still the same door, and it seemed like nothing had happened. But after a breath's time, Li Yunxin stretched out his hand and pulled on the door. As if the space was suddenly cut open, a small window appeared on the door. It was the square that Li Yunxin had drawn. This state was very strange. From one side, one could see that the door was intact and solid. But from the other side, one could see through it, see the scene inside, and hear the sounds inside. The two states overlapped. So, Li Yunxin realized that Hatred's study wasn't as peaceful as it looked before. The moment he opened the small window, he heard angry roars from inside, and the sound of various objects in the room being thrown to the ground, torn to pieces and trampled. The door was bright inside. It was dark before, because the light inside the door was also blocked by the restriction. Li Yunxin leaned against the small window and looked inside, as if he was visiting a prisoner. And the hatred in the prison had completely changed his appearance. His hair was disheveled, and his face was full of anger and evilness. Besides, if Li Yunxin was not wrong, he seemed to be in despair. He stepped on every intact object he saw, and at the same time, hit the 4 walls crazily. However, his movements were weak, which was not what a big demon in the mysterious realm should have. Li Yunxin knew that this was probably because his demonic power was also temporarily sealed. This was not hatred. It was the 9th young master. He watched coldly for a while. The 9th young master had been making trouble in the room for half an hour, and there was no sign of stopping. The 9th young master was like a trapped beast, but he was just venting. Maybe he had tried too many times before, and knew that he could not escape, so he could only be a trapped beast. Li Yunxin used the half an hour to decide whether to talk to him or not. If this 9th young master was acting according to Yazid's intentions at this moment, then a single word from him tonight would cause all the hard work he'd done here to vanish into thin air. Moreover, he would even place himself in a terrifying situation. Then, he took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "9th young master." His voice was steady, without any emotion. Through the small window he opened, the voice should be a little distorted. Therefore, this voice was completely strange to the 9th young master. But this strange, low voice made the 9th young master stop what he was doing. At that time, he was holding a jade pot in his hand, and was about to hit the wall. But he suddenly froze on the spot. Then he slowly turned his head, widened his eyes and looked at the door. Naturally, he could not see anything. Then he threw the jade pot away, tilted his face, squinted his eyes, and walked slowly to the door. His bare feet landed lightly, as if he was afraid that if he stepped too hard, he would scare away the speaker, or miss the next sentence. Li Yunxin looked at him in silence. When he was about to reach the door, he said, "It's me." Because of this sentence, the 9th young master suddenly threw himself on the door, looking around, touching and sniffing like a beast, as if he was looking for the person outside. He was also breathing heavily and angrily. After half an incense stick's time, he finally squeezed out a hoarse voice from his throat. "Who is it?" "Who? Ah, let me out." Li Yunxin frowned slightly. The 9th young master did not look right. He used to be a little cruel and kind, but he was not stupid. But now, he seemed to be a little slow. His mind was slow, his consciousness was numb, and his instinct and indulgence had squeezed out some rational emotions, as if he was really a violent beast, or a demon with low cultivation. He kept silent for a while, observing. The 9th young master seemed to be anxious. He stared at the door, searching, and said, "You talk. You talk. Who are you?" "Ah, Big brother? Third sister? Ah. Panchong. Ah. No, you are. One name after another came out of his mouth. Li Yunxin knew some of them, but he did not know some of them. But the ninth young master seemed to know that it could not be these people. So he spoke very fast. In the end, he could not figure it out, and was about to go crazy again. He suddenly opened his mouth, and was about to bite the window frame. At this time Li Yunxin said, "It's me." The ninth young master stopped again. He stared at the direction of the voice, and his eyes blinked like lightning. After blinking for a while, as if he had found the answer, he suddenly stuck his face to the door, and squeezed out 3 words from his teeth. Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin paused, and did not speak immediately. Then he heard the ninth young master say 2 more words, "Save me." He was a little surprised. But then he frowned. "You are a big demon in the mysterious realm. Why do you need me to save you?" He did not admit his identity from the beginning to the end. Even when he said this, he omitted the word now. But the ninth young master seemed to be sure that it was him, and did not care what he said. He only said, "Save me. Save me. You owe me. You owe me your life." This young master saved your life. Twice. No, thrice. Saving people from the hands of the Lord Tongtian is a troublesome thing, Li Yunxin said calmly. Let's talk about you first. Even if I save you, where can you go? You're still in his body. I don't want you to save me. Ah, no, I want you to save me. The ninth young master stared crazily, and his face was full of fear and panic. But the next moment he suddenly showed a fleeting neurotic smile. Not from this room. Ah, from him, ah? He's here. He suddenly raised his hand, grabbed his chest, and tore his clothes, revealing his chest. Then he used his hand to tear his chest. Save me from him. Li Yunxin hesitated for a while. In his body? Yes. The ninth young master suddenly opened his eyes wide, and then stared at the direction where Li Yunxin's voice came from, motionless. Li Yunxin thought for a while. Now you are in his body, a big demon in the mysterious realm. The Lord Tongtian also told me that he spends half of his waking time and half of his sleeping time. So there is almost no distinction between you two. But how did you become like this? Ninth young master, if you really want me to save you, calm down. Sort out your thoughts and tell me the whole story. In fact, Li Yunxin was surprised. What kind of situation could make the ninth young master lose his composure like this? When he was in the evil king's pitfall mountain, he looked very imposing, but now it was a world of difference. Could it be? He wants to eat me. The ninth young master opened his mouth and said as if he was suffocating. He wants to eat me alive. Even if you don't save me, he will eat you. Ah. Li Yunxin was silent for a while. Ah. Ha. Sure enough. Tell me. Slowly tell me. From the day Li Yunxin met the ninth young master, he knew he was a proud guy. But now, at this moment, he was as obedient as a little beast. When Li Yunxin asked him to speak, he immediately spoke. This made Li Yunxin believe that the ninth young master should be the ninth young master. He did suffer a great fear, and he treated himself as a life-saving straw. The ninth young master spent half an hour to speak, but his words were crazy and vague, and most of the time he repeated the same thing. Li Yunxin had to say a few words from time to guide him, so that he could finish his words. But even so, Li Yunxin had a rough idea. Then, he felt lucky that he made this decision tonight, and took the risk to meet the ninth young master. According to what Qi Wen said, he was going to die. This death was a real death. After being killed by Li Yunxin, Qi Wen's dragon soul possessed the body of the nearest dragon son, Hatred. Hatred had told Li Yunxin that the dragon soul was immortal. When a dragon son died, the dragon soul would gather in the body of the closest one. Hatred had also told Li Yunxin that the more dragon souls a dragon son possessed, the shorter the time they would be awake. It was said that Xiaonyo was only awake for a quarter of a day, and Hatred was only awake during the day. At night, his body would be used by Qi Wen. In fact, he had become 2 different people. Then I saved you again. And then, You used my body to turn from an ant into a big demon. You used to be a yes man in front of me and used your schemes. Humph, now in front of my second brother, are you the same as before? You said you wanted to kill me because you didn't want to live happily. Are you happy now? The ninth young master gritted his teeth. I know you. I know you. Your ambition will never be satisfied. I'm sure you don't want to live by my second brother's side in fear. Ah, you and I are also doomed. Doomed. He suddenly pounded the door, turned around, picked up a few things from the ground, and smashed them all. Then he jumped back to the door. Then I'll fulfill your wish again. Let me tell you, Li Yunxin. They want to compete with Mysterious Gate, just for one thing. That thing is on Mount Yunshan. If you get that thing, you can become the master of all the demons in the world. Shinryu used to become a peerless demon because of that thing. Now my second brother also wants it. Li Yunxin listened to him, but his face didn't change at all. He was silent for a while, and then said, You've told me about it. The ninth young master. What else can you give me? The ninth young master just stared at him. After a while, as if she was struck by inspiration, she suddenly blurted out. Don't ask me what I can give you. Ask yourself what you want. This made Li Yunxin silent again. Finally, after the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, he sighed. How do I save you? Kill my second brother. The ninth young master said, gritting his teeth. Li Yunxin acted like he heard a joke. Me? Kill him? You have a way. The ninth young master said gloomily. I don't know about others, but you? I know you have a way. Hee hee. Don't you want to kill him? If you don't want to kill him, why are you following him? Li Yunxin raised his eyebrows. But the ninth young master couldn't see it. He only heard Li Yunxin ask in a low voice. How can I save you if I kill him? Hearing this, the ninth young master's voice was full of suppressed ecstasy. Of course you can. Not only of course you can. Among all the demons in the world, only you can save him. The ninth young master stared at the door. Because you are the only one. Not only a true state, but also a cultivator, and also a demon with dragons. Chapter 371. At this time, Li Yunxin had talked with the ninth young master for quite a long time. It was time for him to leave. This place was not suitable for him to stay for long. Who knew if the demons here had some unknown methods that he didn't know? Or maybe he would be found out. But he hesitated for a while, and still said, Tell me more details. The ninth young master immediately said, You are already in the true state. Have you practiced the method of transforming the soul into the real body? Yes. Then there is only one way. The ninth young master leaned against the door, and lowered his voice, as if he was afraid that someone would hear him. You killed hatred. Then you are the closest to him. His soul will be attached to your body. My soul will also be attached to your body. Then you will separate your real body. I have a secret technique here that can allow you to split your divine soul into your true body. When you learn this secret method, it won't be your own soul that will be separated, but me. Then I will use the secret method to refine myself. I will become an independent person, but my life will be controlled by you. You will lose nothing except some cultivation and spiritual power. Hearing this, Li Yunxin frowned and pondered for a while. Then he said, I am the dragon's dragon soul undying. I killed hatred, and I was the closest to him. So it is possible that your soul will come to my body. You said to separate your real body. It sounds possible. He thought for a while, and said calmly, But I don't think it is right. The ninth young master, you can attach to hatred's body because he is free. Except for Chiwen, everyone else is free, so you are not awake all the time. But I am not delirious. You came to my body. Will you possess me? Or will you take over my body? He thought for a while, and sighed. Plus, you are a demon who doesn't practice magic. But now you suddenly tell me you have a secret method. Where did you get this secret method? From him, I naturally learned some of the things that he knew. The ninth young master held on to the door, as if he was afraid that Li Yunxin would suddenly turn around and leave. He's wearing me down, and I'm wearing him down too. It's just that he's the owner of this body, so I can't turn the tables on him. But even so, I still peeped into some of his memories and learned some of his techniques. Li Yunxin, why are you worried about being possessed? Aren't you worried about dying? He didn't stop talking. My older brothers and sisters will make a move on you sooner or later. At that time, will you obediently stretch out your neck to be chopped off? Or do you want to live? If you want to live, you only have two choices. The first is to run away. But now that you've escaped, they won't rest until they complete the dragon soul. They'll continue to hunt you down. Can you escape for the rest of your life? With the dragon soul around, you can't even fake your death. Or you killed them. But at that time, the thing you are worried about will still happen. It's just a matter of time. Now with my method, you can gain the upper hand. Although I'm begging you, if you think about it carefully, is it really me begging you? We both benefit from it. You have no choice but to do it. Li Yunxin was silent for a while outside the door. Suddenly he said, "You speak more fluently now." The ninth young master snorted. "It's just nightfall. I'll feel better when it's nightfall. But if you don't save me, I'm afraid I won't even have this time." As soon as he finished speaking, he found that Li Yunxin, who was outside the door, had suddenly stopped breathing. So he shouted angrily and unwillingly, but no one answered him. But it wasn't Li Yunxin who turned around and left. Instead, someone came. It was Wanderer Bai. Li Yunxin thought that Wanderer Bai would have a good time with Zither Lady tonight. But he didn't expect to see him at this moment. He had tidied himself up, but there was anger on his face. He didn't know where this anger came from and where it was going. But he could tell that it wasn't because of anything else, but because of love. So Li Yunxin restrained his breath and stood quietly by the door, waiting for Wanderer Bai to come over. He hid his body. He hid himself in the flow of energy in the palace. It was almost impossible for Wanderer Bai to use any magical power to spy on him. But Wanderer Bai stopped in front of Hatred's study. Li Yunxin naturally didn't know what happened between Hatred and Wanderer Bai on the first day he came to this palace. So he didn't expect that Wanderer Bai would knock on Hatred's door instead of accompanying his Zither Lady on a night like this. Therefore he was slightly stunned. He thought that Wanderer Bai might be Zither Lady's message to his second brother. He knocked on the door, shouted, and found that no one answered, so he gave up. But he didn't expect. Wanderer Bai reached out to push the door. Of course he couldn't. He was already in a bad mood, and now he was even angrier. He frowned. "Lord Tongtian, I have something to say to you." But the Lord Tongtian he was looking for wasn't in the room at the moment. But the ninth young master was in the room. The ninth young master shouldn't be able to hear the conversation outside the door. But Li Yunxin opened a window. When he opened the window, he was very careful, for fear that he would disturb the energy in the restriction on the door and attract Hatred's attention the next day. So if he wanted to close the window, he had to be very careful. So he didn't have time to close the window immediately. The ninth young master heard Wanderer Bai's words. Li Yunxin was silent and held his breath. His heart was in his throat. At this moment, the corridor was quiet and bright, but Li Yunxin felt the atmosphere was extremely tense, until, after one breath, the ninth young master opened his mouth. "Do you promise me or not?" Li Yunxin looked at Wanderer Bai. This sentence was clearly said by Hatred's voice, but Wanderer Bai was slightly stunned, not knowing what this sentence meant. But the ninth young master wasn't asking him, but Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin didn't say anything. He silently pinched his fingers to make a gesture. He had hoped that the ninth young master would help him to deceive Wanderer Bai and ask him to go back as soon as possible so that they could continue the conversation. However, the ninth young master seemed to have lost his pride and sharpness after being tortured by the feeling of being digested alive. So he stubbornly and desperately wanted Li Yunxin to give him a promise. Just a promise was enough. So Li Yunxin began to try to close the window at the risk of disturbing the energy or being noticed by Wanderer Bai. At this moment Wanderer Bai frowned. What did the Lord Tongtian say? His voice passed through the window, so the ninth young master could hear it. And because he could hear it, he could feel it. As the window was closed, the final sound of the sentence became distorted and weakened. He realized what Li Yunqin was doing, so he finally shouted, "Li Yunqin, help me out." Wanderer Bai took a step back, and a brilliant green light burst out from his body. Chapter 372. The aura of the demon at the peak of the true realm suddenly spread out. Thus, the palace lanterns on the roof of the corridor, and the bonsai ornaments by the window were instantly shaken and fell to the ground. However, the moment the shattering sound was heard, an invisible barrier quickly extended and covered all the sounds. Then Li Yunqin showed up in the corridor, closing the window, or creating a barrier that blocked any sound and spiritual power fluctuations, was not a difficult task for him. But if he did both at the same time, he couldn't hide himself perfectly anymore. Seeing him, Wanderer Bai sneered. "Good Li Yunqin, I knew you were up to no good, but now you've given yourself away. Why are you hiding here? Are you going to assassinate the Lord Tongtian?" Li Yunqin stared at him without saying a word, but his hands didn't stop. His fingers were stirring slightly in an imperceptible way. He was stirring the qi in this space to completely close the window he had drawn. If he hadn't killed the human monarch in front of so many demon kings that day, Wanderer Bai, who was also at the peak of the true realm, would probably have rushed over and killed him. But because he still remembered Li Yunqin's appearance in the hall that day, Wanderer Bai didn't dare to fly over. He shouted and saw that Li Yunqin didn't say a word, and just looked at him with his hands clasped behind his back. Therefore, he immediately had a bad premonition. He stopped and withdrew some of the aura he had forced out. He tilted his head slightly and said suspiciously, "No, you don't dare to assassinate the Lord Tongtian. That's courting death. Then what are you doing here? What's going on inside?" After saying this, he turned his head and looked inside the door, shouting, "Lord Tongtian, are you okay?" He still needed 15 minutes. Li Yunqin had to close the door, and the thing he had opened, and erase the traces. Now that Wanderer White had discovered him, he had many excuses he could come up with later. Even if the Lord Tongtian and the Zither Master did not fully believe him, they could still use the situation to temporarily brush him off. But if the traces he left behind were discovered, and if the Lord Tongtian knew that he could actually control the restrictive qi in this hall, no excuse would be able to protect him. That day when he used the golden light deity to seal the Renjuan's demonic power, the Lord Tongtian did not notice. This meant that Lord Tongtian did not know much about the qi movement in the hall. Just like the owner of a house, he knew how to lock and unlock the door of the house. But he did not know the mechanism of the lock, or how it was made. Thus, hatred was able to activate the restriction. But Li Yunqin, who practiced painting, was a locksmith. He could open the lock and break the restriction. And he also knew the back door of the house that even the owner did not know about. If the traces today were not erased, tomorrow hatred would find that the lock on the door had been pried open. Who would allow a person who could lock himself in at any time to stay in his house? Wanderer White asked these two questions, and found that Li Yunqin was still staring at him motionlessly. He made up his mind and was about to pounce on Meng Qi, but he just wanted to find out the truth. And Wanderer White didn't seem to know that hatred was possessed by the ninth young master. He even came to find hatred at night. It seemed that he also didn't know that hatred would sleep at night. This was very strange. Wanderer White was the gigolo of the Zither Master. Logically speaking, he should know the habits of the Zither Master very well. It had been 2,000 years. So if he knew that the Zither Master would sleep longer, there was no reason for him not to know that hatred was in a similar situation. But now, could it be that this guy didn't know at all? This thought flashed across Li Yunqin's mind. His heart skipped a beat, and he immediately said, "Go back." Wanderer White was stunned again. What? Li Yunqin dared to say these 3 words to him after his plan was exposed. And he seemed to be in the right, as if he was the one who was caught instead of Meng Qi. But he saw Li Yunqin sneer. "You idiot. You can't accomplish anything, but you're good at spoiling things. You ruined the Zither Master's plan. Do you think he won't kill you?" Wanderer White frowned. "Li Yunqin, what the hell are you doing? Use your brain to think about it. Li Yunxin stared at him sternly and said slowly, You said that I can't assassinate hatred, and I'm not his match. Then why don't you think about what I'm doing here? In this hall, who else can kill hatred? He shouted the last sentence in a low voice. Wanderer White was stunned for a moment, and then he suddenly shivered. Although he appeared to be a little slow in front of Li Yunxin, he was still quite clever. How could he not know that the person Li Yunxin was talking about was the Zither Master? Wanderer White's eyes widened. What nonsense are you talking about? At this time, Li Yunxin finally let out a long breath. He had closed the window which he had made in the door. Therefore he sighed and said, Bastard. You could have been very useful. But tonight you came to court death. Do you know that if I kill you, the plan will change, and I'll have a headache? Wanderer White frowned. Why would the Zither Master do such a thing? Tell you to kill me? That's even more ridiculous. Li Yunxin, I think you're... Halfway through his words, he suddenly felt something in his chest. Then, the monster energy in his limbs, bones, meridians, and apertures all disappeared. It was blocked in one place and couldn't be circulated. Wanderer White was shocked, and he immediately turned around and walked backward. But just as he took 3 steps forward, he bumped into an invisible barrier and bounced back. He suddenly turned his head. Li Yunxin, don't you dare. He only said these 5 words. What welcomed him was a thunderous strike from Li Yunxin, who had revealed his godly demon body. Li Yunxin flew forward and smashed the top of his skull with one palm. He also smashed half of the Wanderer White's chest, and the broken head sank into his body. A demon at the peak of the true realm had a strong body. Li Yunxin killed him, but his own arm was also shaken, and blood spurted out. The golden blood turned into a cloud of mist in the air. He knew that it was not good, and he hurriedly made a spell to collect all the golden blood gold, not letting it drip on the corpse. Then he returned to his human form, and drew an illusory flame. The flame suddenly appeared in the air, and then it pounced on Wanderer White's corpse according to Li Yunxin's guidance. This wasn't an ordinary fire, but a flame he drew as a primer, mixed with the 9 heavens thunder fire of the dragons. After being burned by this fire, half of Wanderer White's corpse was instantly gone. Only a pile of ashes was left, as if it had been burned by a Taoist spell. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. Wanderer White's soul stood up shakily from the corpse. Li Yunxin swung his hand, and a soul-hooking iron chain appeared in his palm, binding him tightly. When he was in the city of Wei, he sealed Yun Zi's soul in the mountain and river diagram on his folding fan. Now the mountain and river diagram was gone, but he had the magic treasure fog-locked Toad Palace. This Toad Palace was also a place that could imprison ghosts. Even Fu Liangliang's physical body was still trapped inside. Wanderer White's muddle-headed soul quickly realized that he was killed by Li Yunxin. How dare he attack? How could he dare to kill him here? He was originally a ghost, and he relied on his obsession to recultivate, and then he had a physical body. Now that he died for the 2nd time, his obsession was even stronger. When a normal demon cultivator died, his spirit would be damaged, but at least he still had some consciousness. However, this ghost cultivator died, and his spirit was damaged, so he couldn't communicate with him at all. Wanderer White's soul only opened his eyes wide, and he spun around on the spot. Seeing his own corpse on the ground, he wanted to pounce on it, and the iron chain rattled. How did I die? How did I die? How did I die? He kept muttering these words, and he didn't even care about Li Yunxin behind him. This situation was within Li Yunxin's expectations. Therefore, he took 2 steps back and cast another spell, releasing the Fu Liangliang that he had stored in the fog-locked Toad Palace. This Fu Liangliang was Fei Yunzi, who had possessed the Langyi Cave abode. Then he possessed Kuan Wuzi. He was tricked by Li Yunxin in the Lord Dongting Mountain, and Kuan Wuzi brought him back to Daotong. In the end, he possessed Pu Songzi in Daotong, and Li Yunxin kept him in the fog-locked Toad Palace in Chengdu. It was an ill-fated relationship. Now that he was released from the shackles, he was muddle-headed for a period of time, as if he was in a dream. He had been trapped in the fog-locked Toad Palace for many days, and he gradually lost track of time and didn't know what year and month it was. Now when he opened his eyes, he first saw a corpse on the ground, and then Li Yunxin. His reaction was much faster than Samran Bai's, and he didn't speak. He raised his hand and summoned a talisman to protect his body, then waved his sleeve and summoned a magic paper and a magic brush, forming a 3-step barrier in front of him. But he didn't want to risk his life against Li Yunxin. He had suffered so many losses in his hands. How could he not know that his methods were not as good as Li Yunxin's? Everything he did was to protect himself. Only when he felt safe did he have the time to look at Li Yunxin. "You released me. What do you want to talk about?" After saying this, he continued. "We can talk about anything. You know I'm not like those stupid Daotong Kenzo people. You help me, I help you, we don't have to fight to the death." Li Yunxin smiled. "You finally become smarter." While saying this, he waved his hand to disperse the barrier that blocked sound and spiritual power. After all, Fu Liangfang was a cultivator. He was much more sensitive to magic barriers than demons. Previously, he didn't feel the barrier, but now that it was gone, he realized what Li Yunxin had done. This made him feel slightly relieved. He thought that Li Yunxin was expressing goodwill to him. Thus he relaxed his expression. "What is this place? Who is this person on the ground?" Li Yunxin smiled. "What you said just now was very good. You help me, I help you. It's really good if everyone is together. Since that's the case, I have a favor to ask of you. If you help me, I won't pester you anymore, how about it?" Fu Liangfang frowned and thought for a while, then said in a low voice, "It depends on what kind of favor. It depends on whether I can do it or not. Li Yunxin, it's a very simple matter, of course you can do it." After saying this, Li Yunxin's body suddenly expanded. He revealed his god-fiend body that was more than 10 feet tall. He looked down from above, stared at Fu Liangfang in the lingering clouds and grinned. "I heard that you have a good head, can you lend it to me tonight?" After saying this, he suddenly raised his voice and shouted, "In your dreams, you want to frame me?" After saying this, Li Yunxin brazenly pounced toward Fu Liangfang. Just a moment ago, Li Yunxin was talking in a friendly manner, and had even removed the barrier, making him feel that he had a chance. But the next moment, he suddenly showed such a terrifying appearance, and pounced toward him with the force of wind and thunder. How could Fu Liangfang know that Li Yunxin had such a plan? However, he reacted a little faster than Wanderer Bai. He immediately took out a talisman, and was about to use it again. However, the next moment, he encountered the same situation as Wanderer Bai. A golden-bodied warrior suddenly appeared behind him, and he immediately felt that the spiritual aura in his body was completely sealed. At this moment, Li Yunxin had already arrived without any obstruction. The barrier of 3 steps in front of him grabbed his head with a ferocious sharp claw, and crushed it with a bang. From the moment he shouted to the moment Fu Liangfang died, only 3 breaths had passed. But since there was no barrier, in these 3 breaths, the spiritual aura and demonic power violently and vigorously spread out in all directions. Who wouldn't be startled awake? The first to arrive was neither Zither Monarch nor Hatred. These 2 Dragon Sun needed a lot of time to sleep. The first to appear was young Master Pan Chong, whom Li Yunxin had met in the hall before. For some reason, this demon in the true state stayed in the hall. He appeared from one end of the corridor, and saw the scene of Li Yunxin pouncing on Fu Liangfang, and heard his shout. Then, the demon servants and soldiers in the hall rushed over after hearing the news. Fu Liangfang's headless body had already fallen to the ground. As soon as the body fell, Fu Liangfang's soul leaped up. Without stopping or saying a word, he pounced toward young Master Pan Chong on the other side of the corridor. Li Yunxin immediately shouted, "Take him down! The spy from Daotong killed Wanderer Bai." Hearing this, young Master Pan Chang's heart skipped a beat. How did the spy from Daotong sneak into the palace of Lord Tongtian? But he still made a move subconsciously. He pulled out the pair of golden melon hammers from his waist, and the hammers were immediately surrounded by a terrifying green light. Then he spat and made a hand gesture, then opened the magical power of the heavenly eye and saw the soul. Just then, he saw Fu Liangfeng's ghost gnashing his teeth and pouncing toward him, as if he wanted to tear him apart. But Fu Liangfeng hated Li Yunxin for plotting against him again. This kind of humiliation couldn't be described with words. When he saw young Master Pan Chong, he didn't want to be entangled with him. He just wanted to run for his life. He was a soul cultivated by the Freemasonry, using a secret technique, and could freely possess other souls. Those ordinary dead souls couldn't compare to him. Even now he still had methods and could cast spells. Thus, a green light suddenly appeared on his body, and he raised his hand to give young Master Pan Chong a lightning palm. Accompanying this lightning palm, he casually threw out a Kenzo green light sword. These two spells attacked from the left and right, and the angle was insidious and crafty. Young Master Pan Chong wasn't Li Yunxin. He didn't know anything about Taoist cultivation. What he relied on was the demon clan's powerful physical body. Seeing these two spells, he immediately knew that what Li Yunxin said was true. This guy was really a cultivator. He was shocked and hurriedly dodged. He wasn't a dragon's. How could he dare to use his body to take on a strange Taoist cultivation? Taking advantage of this moment, Fu Liangfeng turned around, wanting to escape through the window at the side of the corridor. Chapter 373. However, what Fu Liangji didn't know was that the entire hall was a magical treasure, easy to enter but hard to leave. Li Yunxin had once thrown a jade cup out of the window, but the cup landed on the ground and returned to its original position in the blink of an eye. Now, like a gust of wind, he whizzed through the gap of the window. He was secretly happy that he had escaped with his life, but in the next moment, his vision blurred, and he was back in the corridor. That young Master Coiled Intestine was originally ridiculing Li Yunxin in every possible way, but after seeing Li Yunxin kill the Renjun, he felt very indignant. At this time, he was frightened by the wandering soul that was killed by Li Yunxin, and almost let him escape. How could he not be angry? Seeing that Fu Liangji had returned to the corridor in a daze, he didn't even say a word, but raised the golden hammers in his hands and smashed. The pair of golden hammers in his hands were not ordinary objects. They were formed from his pair of pincers, and specialized in smashing wandering souls. Who was the real body of this young Master Coiled Intestine? It was a 1,000-year-old blue-backed river crab in Tongtian Swamp, who had attained Tao. Originally, the scholars of this world said that crabs had no intestines, and called him gutless young master. But this crab had attained Tao, and transformed into a human, saying that he had all the meridians and apertures, and was no longer a muddle-headed worm. People call him gutless young master, but I insist on calling him young Master Coiled Intestine. His daily favorite thing to do was to transform into this elegant young master, run to the city near his lair, and pretend to be a scholar, and walk to the school. When he saw the teacher, he would ask, "Does the teacher know of another name for the river crab?" Once the teacher said gutless young master, he would immediately take out the twin hammers from his waist and smash his head into pieces. Over time, no one near his lair dared to say gutless young master. Not only no one said it, but no one even lived in the city. They only said that there were demons nearby, and they had all run away. Unfortunately, his lair was in Tongtian Swamp, and was under the protection of hatred. The people of Daotong and Kenzo couldn't get rid of him even if they wanted to. Instead, they raised him into an eccentric character of seeking revenge for his hatred. Because of this personality, his attacks on Fu Liangzi could be said to be fast and ruthless. A pair of golden melon hammers smashed down on Fu Liangzi's head. Although this Fu Liang was a wandering soul, he was not an ordinary wandering soul. He could still use his Tao techniques. His body immediately emitted a misty golden light to protect himself as he took the attack head-on. At this time he already knew that Li Yunxin, that cunning thief, had done something bad again and wanted to frame him. He felt that there was no hope of escape. He only thought that he could not let Li Yunxin have his way. He opened his mouth and shouted, "It's that evil thief Li Yunxin who wants to marry." Young Master Pan Chang's pair of golden melon hammers normally killed countless creatures. Their resentment was very heavy. Now that he had used 70% of his strength, not only did this wandering soul not disperse, but it even used the golden light to resist, and could still speak. He was instantly furious. How could he care about what Fu Liangliang said? Immediately, he gathered all his strength and smashed it down with a loud bang. Before Fu Liangliang could say the word disaster, he was immediately smashed back by gutless young master's hammer. When Li Yunxin killed Fu Liangliang, he knew that these Freemasons Fu Liangliang were not ordinary wandering souls. Normal methods would not be able to disperse them. Only the dragon's 9 heavens thunderfire could do it. And the original intention of letting this wandering soul of Fu Liangliang escape was to show the demons who rushed over. When they saw with their own eyes that he was a fellow of Daotong and Kenzo, he would then deal with him. In the end, this gutless young master was still a person who would get dizzy at the slightest provocation, and would not listen to Fu Liangliang's words. This was really giving him a pillow when he was sleepy. Therefore, seeing that this scene had been done enough, when young Master Pan Chang's hammer fell, Li Yunxin suddenly used the golden light deity in the hall to suppress Fu Liangliang's soul. At the same time, he widened his eyes and stretched out his hand, as if he wanted to stop young Master Pan Chang. "Hammer, spare him!" A cloud sprayed out from his palm, looking like it was going to wrap around the crab spirit's golden hammer. This crab spirit did not like Li Yunxin to begin with. The more he was told to spare him, the more he didn't want to spare him. He used even more strength and smashed down fiercely. Li Yunxin's realm was not high when he killed Fu Liangliang, and he still needed to summon the 9 heavens thunder fire. But now that he was in the real realm, the thunder and lightning were hidden in the fog, turning into thousands of tiny electric snakes. Young Master Pan Chang's hammer smashed down, and the golden light protecting Fu Liangliang's body was immediately scattered. His soul was like a puff of green smoke, showing signs of dispersing. At this moment, the cloud of fog that wrapped around the tiny electric snakes arrived again. A series of crackling sounds followed by the crab spirit's next few heavy blows. This Fu Liangliang, who had come back from death, and was able to keep a trace of his life, finally perished under the joint attack of the 2 great demons in the real realm, and under the effect of this huge magic weapon. Li Yunxin was secretly happy, and heaved a sigh of relief. But he still put on an angry face. He widened his eyes and looked at young Master Pan Chang. "I told you to spare him, but you killed him?" Young Master Pan Chang smiled coldly. "Ha! Lord of Wei River told me to spare him, but it was too late. I was in the mood to kill, and didn't have time to stop." Li Yunxin's expression suddenly changed. "You were in the mood to kill? In my opinion, this Daotong Taoist priest didn't have a spy. So how did he sneak into the hall?" "He snuck into the hall and killed Wanderer Bai, and was discovered by me and destroyed his physical body. But you hurriedly killed him. Did you kill him just because you were in the mood to kill him?" Young Master Pan Chang didn't expect that someone would slander him the next moment, after they had just killed someone. He was slightly stunned. During this time Li Yunxin scolded him even more fiercely. Moreover, he approached him, looking like he was going to take him down. It should be known that Li Yunxin was used to being a bad person. There were so many demons in this cave, and each of them had killed many people. But these demons killed and ate people mostly because of their nature. In the eyes of pigs, geese, chickens, and ducks, humans were also scary demons. But if they really wanted to harm people, perhaps those demons combined were not a match for Li Yunxin. As a bad person, of course, he knew that a bad person would complain first. If he didn't pretend to be wronged and angry, how could people believe him? Not only did he have to feel wronged, but he also had to reveal a limited truth, so that people would believe him, and cover up any possible flaws. Thus he shouted angrily, "You idiot, do you know who you killed?" Young Master Pan Chang sneered at him just now, because of a moment of anger. Only now, looking at Li Yunxin's appearance, did he realize that he had probably killed the wrong person. When he recalled how Li Yunxin killed Ren Huang in front of the hall that day, he felt even more afraid. He knew that he was not a match for Ren Huang. Thus, when he calmed down, his momentum weakened a little. With his weakness, Li Yunqin became even more obedient. He stared at young Master Pan Chong with a pair of terrifying, bell-like golden eyes in his godly body, and breathed out hot mist from his mouth. He shouted angrily like thunder. The wandering soul you killed was a spy of the Freemasonry in Daotong. His name is Fu Liangzi. You idiot, do you know who Fu Liangzi is? I have fought with that Fu Liangzi several times, and have always wanted to capture him alive, and ask him about the Freemasonry. Now that I finally have the chance, I was killed by you. Are you also a pawn of the Freemasonry? How would young Master Pan Chong know anything about the Freemasonry? But listening to Li Yunqin's tone, he felt that he was really angry. He knew that he had probably ruined his plan. With this fear in his heart, he stammered and couldn't say anything. The him he was referring to was naturally young Master Pan Chong. At this moment, the crab spirit realized. The soul of the Taoist he killed was the soul of Zither Monarch's favorite gigolo. If he had destroyed the Taoist's physical body, then it would have been fine. But it was Li Yunqin who destroyed his physical body and made him scatter his soul. This was a typical example of doing his best, but not getting any benefits. Thinking up to this point, how could the crab spirit still be angry? He was even more afraid that a great demon at the peak of the profound realm would tear him apart. He timidly turned his head to look at Zither Monarch, only to find that there was no anger on Zither Monarch's face. It was as if the one who died wasn't Wanderer Bai, but an insignificant servant demon soldier, or a pet. The profound realm great demon slowly walked through the corridor and arrived in front of Fu Liangliang's physical body. Then she calmly looked at it, then slightly turned her head to look at Li Yunqin. Ninth brother, you killed him with one strike? Li Yunqin seemed to still be immersed in anger. He indignantly said, it was one strike. But Zither Monarch doesn't need to ask me how I did it. I have my own methods. What he said was reasonable. Demons weren't cultivators. If a cultivator revealed some strange ability that their elders didn't know about, they might be worried that they had learned some evil tricks. But for demons, whatever abilities they had were their own methods. Unless they were enemies who fought to the death, there was no reason to force others to reveal their life-saving methods. Zither Monarch didn't care about his attitude and only nodded. She then moved to look at Wanderer Bai. Wanderer Bai was also killed with one strike. But right now, his soul was still lingering on his corpse, still muttering, how did I die? How did I die? And so on. Zither Monarch slightly narrowed her eyes and stared at Wanderer Bai's soul for a while. Her current expression was solemn and serious, completely different from her cheerful appearance in the study. It was more in line with her identity as the young dragon master. After watching for a while, she knew that the soul's consciousness was too heavily injured and couldn't get any more information out of him. When a normal person died, their soul would be damaged, and they would become a ghost cultivator. But when a ghost cultivator died, his already damaged soul would be even more injured. It was already a blessing that he was still alive. At this time, Li Yunqin was very close to him and could see his complexion. Logically speaking, the phrase, does your complexion look good, should refer to a person. Humans would always have headaches, fever, or some minor illness, so their complexion would look bad. But how could a demon get sick? Then, Li Yunqin realized that Zither Monarch's face was deathly pale, as if he had suffered a heavy injury. Perhaps it was a side effect of him forcefully waking up from his deep slumber. After a while, Zither Monarch seemed to smile. This Taoist has some tricks up his sleeve. Wanderer Bai also has 2,000 years of cultivation. After saying this, he was silent for a while. Then, he lightly raised his hand and waved. That Wanderer Bai's remnant soul instantly dissipated like it was made of smoke. Then, she looked at Li Yunqin. Even you, ninth brother, would find it difficult to kill him with one strike from such a distance. But how did you find him? Li Yunqin took a deep breath and hesitated for a while. Then, he narrowed his eyes and stared fiercely at young Master Panchong, saying reluctantly, I came out at night. Why did I go out? Zither Monarch shouldn't ask. Only then did I notice something was wrong. The Freemasons practice a very special method, dual cultivation of the Tao and the sword. I've had many dealings with them, so I'm very sensitive to their auras. Naturally, I have a way to deal with them. There wasn't much truth in what he said, and there were two parts that were unclear. But if he wanted people to believe him, he had to mix truth with falsehood. Li Yunxin was known for his intelligence, so no one would believe that he would use such an excuse that was full of loopholes. This kind of ability and generosity was probably not something that anyone in this world could do. After much thought, perhaps only the two Yama kings had such means. Ninth brother. Perhaps it was a coincidence that you caught the eye of the king of hell. But the king of hell is not that scary. The Zither master took a step forward and stopped in front of Li Yunxin. He looked at him seriously. If ninth brother was killed by me, the king of hell would not be able to protect your soul. At that time, even if there was a way to become a ghost cultivator, ninth brother should know that you would not be the same person as you are now. That is why the Taoists from the celestial sect of wonders were unwilling to become ghost cultivators or Een masters after they died. The Zither master paused for a moment, as if he wanted Li Yunxin to digest his words. Then he said, "Little brother, do you understand?" Li Yunxin nodded. "I understand." At this time, his face was calm and was no longer as angry as before. His anger earlier was just for the Zither master to see. But now that he heard the Zither master's words, he knew that the Zither master was very suspicious. That was why he only said that he would plant demonic power in his head. But now he limited it to 15 days, and used the incident with Bai Yanjun as an example. It was almost a naked threat. Li Yunxin felt that even if he came back within 15 days, he would not be able to live a good life. However, when he came to see the ninth young master at night, and even ran to Yazid's lair, he did it very casually. He knew in advance that these things were very risky, and any one of them could go wrong. Even a quarter of an hour ago, he was mentally prepared that the Zither master would kill him. But now it seemed that the situation in Daotong was very important to the Zither master. They wanted him to go there. After that trip, they would settle the score when they came back. Li Yunxin suddenly laughed. Because he did not know why, at such a dangerous moment, he thought of his previous life. That old man would say when it was almost the new year, that he would let him go first, and settle the score after the new year. But after that he did not settle the score. Since that person did not want to settle the score with him, why would he let others do it? The reason why he was so bold these days was because death was the last thing he was afraid of. He still had one more card. The Zither master might as well use Bai Yunxin and Red Lady to threaten him. But now that things had come to this, even though it was not said out loud, smart people knew that in reality, the smiling face on the surface had already been torn apart. The Zither master knew that Li Yunxin had done something in this hall. She also knew that Wanderer Bai's death might have something to do with Fu Liangzi or Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin also knew that the Zither master did not want to be a good brother anymore, and threatened him with death. But this was the result he wanted, so he took a deep breath, and looked up at the Zither master. In that case, I want to take Bai Yunxin and Red Lady away. With the Zither master's extraordinary ability, it should not be difficult to find them in the future. But right now, just 10 days ago, I came here to save them. Now that I am in the Zither master's hands, I will exchange myself for them. Hearing his words, the Zither master let out a soft ah. Then she shook her head and asked doubtfully, "Ninth brother, do you really like those two girls?" She did not say demoness or demoness, but insisted on saying girls. But when she said this, her expression and tone did not seem out of place, as if she was just an ordinary person. But this was the most out of place. Li Yunxin also shook his head. "Not really. Zither master knows that I am also a cultivator. Cultivators always have to forget their emotions and transcend their tribulations. I promised one of them something, and the other saved me time and time again. How can I let go of this kind of thing when I am a cultivator? so I am doing it for myself. The Zither master nodded in understanding. Ah, so. Then he turned to look at Wanderer Bai's corpse on the ground. I understand. Wanderer Bai said he saved your life. Even if he was raised like a cat or a dog for 1 or 2,000 years, he would still have feelings for him. If he was harmed by someone, there must be an explanation. He paused for a moment. Then take him with you. Hearing this, Li Yunqin immediately smiled. Okay. I will leave this matter to the Zither master. After saying this, he turned around and left. The Zither master did not linger, and also went to her own room. The group of demon servants and demon soldiers naturally couldn't say anything, but that young master Coiled Intestines was dumbfounded as he watched from the side. Such a big matter was actually going to end up like this? Then would Unfettered Bai's death be in vain? The Zither master actually believed Li Yunqin's nonsense. He was puzzled, but how could he dare to ask the Zither master? Until now, he still felt that perhaps the Zither master really believed Li Yunqin's words. Perhaps his head would be twisted off if he stretched it out. This Panchang Gongzi stood blankly on the same spot. His mind was in a mess. Let's not talk about it for the time being. After Li Yunqin left this corridor, she went straight to Red Madam and Bai Yunqin's room. There was no one guarding in front of their door, because there was a restriction on the door. But Li Yunqin hurried over. As soon as he stopped in front of the door, he raised his hand and drew a few lines on the door. Then he kicked the door open. Previously, when he played tricks on Hatred's door, it took him a full quarter of an hour, and he had to be very careful. But that was because he had to do it without leaving any traces and not be discovered. But at this time, he had made up his mind. He did not care about leaving any traces. When the door was kicked open, he saw Bai Yunqin, Red Lady, and Little Shell standing up vigilantly. When he saw Li Yunqin, he frowned slightly. You. Li Yunqin stood still and said in a low voice. Now come with me. Bai Yunqin blinked. Go. What's wrong? Where are we going? Now was not the time to talk nonsense. However, what Li Yunqin hated the most in her previous life were those who did not say anything in times of crisis, and only kept saying, I'll explain to you later, over and over again. Then, they would ask the two of them to chatter all the way and cause a lot of trouble. He felt that if he had the time to say, I will explain to you later, he would have already explained everything. Thus he stood at the door, and after a dozen or so breaths of time, he briefly recounted what had happened, but it was not a simple matter. In the end he said in a low voice, Now you know, come with me now. Bai Yunqin frowned. She looked at Red Lady first. You haven't been here these days, so you don't know the situation, but I do. Now that I've heard what you've said, I can guess the reason. This little fish demon is becoming more and more muddle-headed. I'm afraid that just like the 9th young master, her consciousness is slowly being worn away by the dragon soul in her body. Then she looked at Li Yunqin. How can we leave with her? As soon as we leave, Longda will immediately know that you can break the inhibition in the hall. He will naturally know that you killed Wanderer Bai and Fu Lifang. You will be exposed immediately. Li Yunqin paced at the door and turned to look at him. Ah, exposed. Do you think he is a fool? He only believes 30 to 40% of what I said. The reason why I said those lies was to make him believe 30 to 40% of what I said, so that he can give himself an excuse. Because he thinks that I am still useful. And because of that excuse, he can delay my death for more than 10 days. So if we go out now, he can only say to himself with a cold smile, sure enough. But if Hatred wakes up and hears what happened tonight from Zither Master, he will immediately know that I went to find the 9th young master. And he will also know what the 9th young master might have said to me. Just now, the 9th young master told me that their memories are slowly being consumed. By that time, he will know that I can walk around in this hall without leaving a trace. That will be the end of me. After saying these words, Li Yunqin spread out his hands. So, I will ask you one last time. Are you going or not? If you don't, I will run away. Bai Yunqin and Little Shell looked at each other. Let's go. When the four of them walked to the door, there were already demon soldiers on night duty at the door. Something big happened in the hall just now. so these demon soldiers and servants could not be as relaxed as before. On the left and right side of the door, there were two beast-headed muscular men, looking mighty and majestic, but when they saw the four of them, they rolled their eyes and stared at each other, as if they could not see Li Yunxin walking past them. These demon soldiers were only in the realm of wills and emptiness. Putting aside Li Yunxin and Bai Yunxin, even Little Shell and Red Madam, who were at the transcendent state, were people that they could easily kill with a slap of their hands, let alone Li Yunxin and Bai Yunxin. Plus, these days, Li Yunxin often walked around in the hall, who didn't know him. At this time, they first heard that Long Jiu and Long De seemed to have some dispute, and then Long Jiu was going to leave with the others. Anyone who wanted to keep their life, who would dare to stop them? Maybe if the great demon was in a bad mood, he would just kill them. This Long Jiu Wei River Lord killed the great demon of the human monarch in front of the hall, and their Lord Tongtian did not say anything. So the four of them walked to the white jade stairs of the hall. Usually, they could still walk out when they came here, but as soon as they walked down the stairs, they would be back on the stage again. But now, Li Yunxin stood still, took out a magic pen from his sleeve, and slashed it in the air like a knife. The tip of the pen trembled slightly, and no one knew how many changes it had gone through, and how much Qi had been adjusted. Then there was no light or change, but there seemed to be a soft pop sound. It was as if a huge bubble had burst. So Li Yunxin walked out. He walked 13 steps and stood on the rough ground under the white jade stairs. Then he turned his head and looked at the three people on the stairs. Come. In this one glance, he also saw the second floor of the palace. It seemed that the Zither monarch was looking at him from the window. His expression was calm, as if he had already expected that Li Yunxin could break the prohibition and walk out of the hall by himself. Now he was just calmly watching his guess come true. Li Yunxin looked at him for a while, and then looked away. He originally planned to look at the camp of the Monster Kings from afar. Previously, he did not get along well with the Monster Kings, so he did not plan to go through their camp. He felt that it was best to fly and directly get out of this Guanyuan crypt. But his eyes did not turn to the direction of the camp, and only glanced at the back of the palace. Then he suddenly stopped, and could no longer move his eyes away. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.